radio for the masses.
Headline edition, July 8, 1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army.
If the game is rigged, change the game. Game changer.
I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
This is Fade to Black with your host, Jimmy Church, on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, the Global Radio Alliance.
I need your help to get to the year 1985.
You're listening to Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Network.
Good evening. Fade to Black. Bespoke radio for the masses. Yeah, man. Fade to Black. Monday, April 30th, 2018. 120 days into the new year, just 245 days left. We are live from a bunker somewhere in downtown Burbank, California, and I would like to welcome everybody listening all around the world, all across the United States. Hither and thither, to and fro, back and forth, up and down, east and west, north and south, far and near. This is Fade to Black for KJCR, the Game Changer Network, and KGRA The Planet. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. What is cracking, everybody? How you doing? Yeah, man. Another week kicking off here on Fade to Black. An amazing week we've got lined up because tonight, very special guest back with us. The one and only Chance Gardner is here. Director of Magical Egypt, Series 1 and 2. We're going to talk about the latest release, Episode 5. Yeah, I got the sneak preview, by the way, and it's good. It's great. Tomorrow night, Ken Johnston is here, NASA image whistleblower. His story and those images that he's in possession of, it is extraordinary. So that's what we're going to do tomorrow night, and we've wanted Ken on the show for a long time. Met Ken in Roswell a couple of years ago, going through all of his stuff, and it's the time could not be better, right? So he'll be joining us tomorrow night for the first time. And then Wednesday night, the one and only Michaela Sheldon is back. One of the most requested return guests in the history of this program. And so she will join us again on Wednesday night. Really looking forward to that. And Thursday, another Fader night with John Rappaport. John will be here. He is back. And open lines all night long. It's because it's Fader night. So that's our week lined up. And finally, we get to a weekend off. What are we going to do? Now, you can follow us on Twitter at JChurchRadio, Facebook, YouTube. Everything is Fade to Black. And you can go and hang out a little bit longer on Facebook. On Stellar is taking over. And for those of you out there that have experienced On Stellar, you know exactly what I'm talking about. More on that in just a minute. Follow us on Twitter at JChurchRadio. And you can go over to jimmychurchradio.com and click and follow, like, and subscribe. Okay? All right. The Sandbox is hashtag F2B on Twitter. And now... and you can come over to the Sandbox and hang out. I don't see Twitter for us going anywhere for a while. One of the reasons why I enjoy Twitter is the lack of advertising there. I don't know how they make money. But, TweetDeck, no ads. So there you go. All right. Twitter. I like Jack Dorsey. And so there you go. All right. Any questions or comments during the show tonight or any other night? Hashtag F2BQ. And we had a very busy weekend, not only with, coast to coast and all of the work that we do and prepping for the show and doing all of that, but it was On Stellar all weekend. And any questions or comments about On Stellar, you can hit me on Stellar. You can go and find me there, certainly. You can email me directly, jimmy@jimmychurchradio.com. And anything that I can do, any suggestions, let me know directly. But today is day 6 of On Stellar alpha testing, and for all registered users. And it's a really, 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 really big deal. The platform looks awesome. We went through so many revs and upgrades over the weekend, and it just got better and better and better. It's alpha testing. This isn't the final site, as great as it is. And I understand that. Right now, all of those things that you love doing, which is hanging out with friends and messaging and a friends list and uploading and writing articles and posting and upvoting, and you can downvote. All of that stuff is functional. You can create groups and stuff. Now, we've got thousands of bug fixes, but things are little now. There's lots of them, but the I keep saying website, the platform itself is beautiful and functional and is working, and it's fast. It's amazingly quick. Now, the things that you will enjoy about OnStellar, and you can go to alpha.onstellar.com. You can go and now register directly at the website. And today, we had a huge increase in registered users. Huge, thousands and thousands today. Website did not slow down at all. And that was really cool. But to see that, everybody going there and on hanging out, seeing for the first time what you can expect, what I've talked about is what you are seeing. No advertising. And the poison that is out there right now. And I went over and hung out on Facebook this weekend, and to just see it, right? Just, go through the news feed, and I read hundreds of things, but every other post is an ad. Every other post. And it's just like you see it to the left and to the right and here and videos and things. It's like this big psyops. And it's discouraging. I don't dig it anymore. So you go over to OnStellar, and there's no advertising. There's no data mining. There's no data collection. There's none of that. You don't even have to put in any information there if you don't want to. But I would encourage letting people know where you live, what country or what state or what city you are in. That's cool because they know geographically, get their mind around it. But that's it. And there's no data mining, there's no data collection, there's no advertising to do any of that. There's no reason for it. And so there you go. No advertising and this user experience. And it goes back to what the internet used to be when you didn't have this. Remember when pop-up ads would start and how angry you were, and we had to go through that phase of things? That's there because we weren't seeing advertising, right? And it was just about us hanging out. Well, that's exactly what OnStellar is. You can go there right now and post and create. And for anybody out there, and I'm saying anybody that has a thought and you're doing your research and you want the world to see it, you can go right there, create an article, tag it, put your title on it, post it, and watch it trend. And the trending model that is used is very simple. It's how many people like it and how much time. So you can actually get your article up there and trending right away, and people can see what you have to say. And then go back, and you guys make friends and then message and connect. That's what it's about. It's magical. It's absolutely amazing. So go and register today, alpha.onstellar.com. It's that simple. Use the promo code Jimmy. All right? And, or don't, but when OnStellar launches the official site and that token economy kicks in, you're going to get bonus tokens, and you want those, right? So that's why you need to use the promo code Jimmy. Okay? All right. Oh, what an incredible weekend. Just absolutely incredible. All right, coming up, I can't even believe it, but less than 4 weeks away is Contact in the Desert. June 1st through the 4th, 2018, Indian Wells, Palm Springs at the Renaissance Resort and Spa. Full weekend of activity going on out there. Go to contactinthedesert.com. You can click on the banners over at Jimmy Church Radio. And look at the speakers list. Look who is there. It's absolutely amazing. And we'll be broadcasting live, of course, Friday night. And I'll be hosting and emceeing and doing all kinds of things all weekend long, hanging out with you. We'll have a great booth. OnStellar is going to have a booth next to us. And come and hang out. Okay? And that will be June 1st through the 4th, Contact in the Desert. And then right after that, coming up in August, is our Soul Tech, which is up at ECETI Ranch. Go to soultechgathering.com. Click on the banners at jimmychurchradio.com. Tickets and info are right there. We're only selling 300 tickets for this event. Michaela Sheldon, who will be with us on Wednesday, is going to be one of the featured speakers up there at Soul Tech. And now I was just getting ready to say we had a James Gilliland on Coast to Coast on Friday night. ECETI is such a magical place. And over the weekend, do you remember the Malibu underwater base? I flew out over the base. I flew out in a private plane and shot video and took a bunch of pictures, and we posted that stuff years ago. Well, anyway, that pilot of the plane is a friend of mine that I grew up with, and he's now a commercial pilot for a major carrier, right? Flies jets, commercial jets. But I grew up with him, and he was the pilot that took me out over the Malibu base. And I haven't talked, his name's Steve, and I haven't talked to him in a while. He's a busy guy, right? He's a commercial pilot. Shoots me this text over the weekend. Hey, Church, man, I want to take my family, my wife, and some friends up to ECETI. And I'm looking at this pod, I'm like, where did that come from? I've known him since we were little kids, right? And I said, Soul Tech. And he hit me back, and he goes, really? We're going. So remember this conversation that I'm having with you right now. When you go up to ECETI, I'm going to introduce to everybody one of my oldest friends that on this planet, and the pilot that flew over the Malibu base. And you're going to get to meet him. I can't wait. I'm going to walk around with this guy all weekend. I cannot wait for him to come up and meet all of you. It's think about that. I get to have this opportunity to do something that cool. So anyway, Soul Tech, soultechgathering.com, and 300 Fadernauts are going to go hang out with all of us up there for 4 nights, and let's go do this. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast. We have over 845 archive shows right there. Custom apps, Apple, Android, everything that you need, just $2 a month. Go to jimmychurchradio.com and click on that podcast banner. You can also become a Fadernaut in our membership section on the site. You get the Bunker Cam, commercial-free, downloadable archives. And if you get the Game Changer, you're going to get that Fade to Black gear, that autographed hat and T-shirt. If you renew your Game Changer for this year, you're going to get the new Fade to Black T-shirts that, I forgot them again. You know what? I promise tomorrow I'll post them up on the Bunker Cam. I'll take some pictures. They look really good. All right? And you can do that over in our membership section on the site. Don't forget all of our sponsors here, Life Change Tea, GetTheTea.com, River Moon Coffee, New Pharma, Ancient Life Oil, Sacred Skulls, New Manna Food Storage, and, of course, Bearing Optics. Let's get this show cracking. Lots to talk about tonight. Happy birthday to today. Cloris Leachman is 92. Unbelievable. And still doing it. Last season, she was in the series American Gods, which I can't wait for season 2. Great cliffhanger. She was on American Gods last year. But we all remember her as Nurse Diesel in High Anxiety. Yeah. Cloris Leachman, 92 years old. Kirsten Dunst is 36. Now, listen, before you go, wait a minute, church. Kirsten Dunst, she was in a movie that you may not have seen. It's called Melancholia. And that movie, disturbing as it is one of the most amazing casts put together. It's a movie about Earth colliding with another planet and how it affects everybody mentally, knowing that everything's about to come to an end. I'm not going to give away the end of the movie, but it all comes to an end. It's an incredible movie. So Kirsten Dunst made the list. Melancholia. Go check it out. Today, the man, Willie Nelson, is 85. And so I went through, I couldn't help it. I went through and listened to a bunch of Willie Nelson tracks today. Always on my mind. Blue Eyes Crying in the Rain. And, of course, his guest appearance on Lukenbach, Texas. Waylon Jennings, Lukenbach, Texas. Willie Nelson today is 85 years old. On this day in history, 1945, Adolf Hitler commits suicide. Allegedly. Fate or fact? Now, listen to me. Oh, Sarah Ann just said Melancholia, one of my favorites. I know, right? I mean, that's a great movie. Great movie. Fate or fact? According to astronauts, space smells like, okay, wait for it. You ready? Space smells like seared steak, hot metal, and welding fumes. That's right. That's according to astronauts. I haven't smelled it yet. But that's interesting. Makes you wonder, doesn't it? All right. Also, before I get to my little rant, today, in about 2 hours, less than 2 hours, Armenia is going to elect a new prime minister. Now, I've been talking about their little revolution that they've been going through. The demonstrations have not stopped. There's been 100 to 200,000 people each night marching in the streets. And it all comes down to today, which is tomorrow, which is May 1st, already there. And these elections are going to go down. And I will find out what's going to happen here in a couple hours. And I will share that with you. It's 7:18. It's going down at 9 o'clock their time in less than 2 hours. 1 hour and 50 minutes. Incredible. 1 hour, 40 minutes. 50 minutes. Today is 7:18. Yeah. Okay, so there you go. Armenia. Things can change. Well, tonight Chance Gardner is here, and tomorrow night Ken Johnston is here. Wednesday night Michaela Sheldon, and then Thursday night John Rappaport and his No More Fake Newsroom. Now, okay, here we go. So ATIP is not ATIP, but ASAP. The Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, ATIP, or is it Advanced, you know what? Okay. Whatever the name is, apparently, Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program doesn't exist, or did, or it changed its name, or it ran underneath another program, or it's just, how do I say this? Not real. Made up. In reality, suggested from recent, and I'm quoting here, air quotes, uncovered documents, it was the Advanced Aerospace Weapons System Application Program, otherwise known as OSAP. Now, first, before I get started, Richard Dolan was on before me tonight on his program speaking about this. And I do want to thank Richard Dolan and Paul Dean for bringing the project name forward. Great work, seriously, okay? But there is one problem with the recently uncovered documents, because I've had those secret uncovered documents on my hard drive for at least the last year. The documents themselves are dated 2010, and I have them all. I have both reports. I sent them to Dolan right before the show tonight, and I spoke with Richard a few times this afternoon before his show tonight. And like everyone else, we are trying to figure out what is really going on. And he's so good at what he does, and his way at looking at things, it really opens up my eyes. I talk about that a lot. That being said, by revealing the project name, well, that says a lot for many reasons. Whether it's from secret documents, air quotes, secret documents that are not so secret. If I have them, then there's no telling who else has got these documents. So, and when I read them, I thought that when I read these secret, air quote, documents, when I read them last year, it might have even been 2 years ago. I've had them on my hard drive for a long time. And when I read them, both reports, I thought at that time that it was really good science fiction and theory, and it didn't really move me enough at that time to talk about it, to comment on them, about who wrote it. The author's name is right there, very well known, by the way. But my memory says that it was stamped unclassified for general release. Right? So I could be wrong on that, but the name Advanced Aerospace Weapons Systems Application Program is in there. And it was the documents themselves, they were about wormholes and advanced engines, warp drives, and things like that. And so I just thought it was well-written theory from somebody with a scientific background looking at the future and the potential of different things. And I was like, okay, cool. I didn't even know why these reports would have been written up. It just seemed like really, really good scientific thought. Science fiction. And which is cool. There's nothing wrong with that. But I didn't consider it top secret or anything else. And I read through them a couple of times and actually had the thought of, this would make a really good book, right? Well, I know that there are a bunch of researchers out there that are going to jump on this and say that it means so much for ufology and disclosure, and it might, but, and sure, that's important, but if it's actually tied to UFOs or UAPs or ET in any way, then it could be significant, but we really don't know anything. So let me talk about what's really important here, since nobody else will. All right, and this is what needs to be driven home. If things play out the way that they are currently presented in these reports, then, well, the name Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, ATIP, never existed. And that's something that needs to be discussed, which means that the New York Times got it wrong, which fed into all of the other mainstream news, and they all got it wrong too. And this needs to be raised, this point, which means that To the Stars Academy or Elizondo never corrected or retracted ATIP. And that needs to be addressed. Which means that To the Stars Academy has spread disinfo by either not knowing what they were talking about, that's disinformation certainly, or maybe directly not caring about presenting the true facts. The newly found Advanced Aerospace Weapons System Application Program, OSAP, by its very definition, is a man-made satellite weapon system like Star Wars and has nothing to do with ET and everything to do with current weapons platform, that are used in space, in our Earth orbit, or missiles, whatever. but not flying saucers or even Mylar party balloons. I raise these questions because if Elizondo is who he says he is, then I think that he may be full of himself. In that, if we are to take these two reports that are not secret, they're not, they were declassified and so forth. But if we're going to take those at face value, which is fine, I have no issues with that. They could be 100% spot on the money, theorizing the future of things and this new program. So if that is indeed the case, that means that Elizondo didn't actually work for anything UFO at the Pentagon. And that I'm just going backwards and connecting the dots. He never got the name right because it didn't exist. And what really existed, he didn't know anything about. And I'm talking about this new Advanced Aerospace Weapons Systems Application Program, right? Is OSAP really ATIP? I don't think he worked for, I don't. Otherwise, he would have gotten this other program's name correct, right? So I don't think he worked for it. He didn't work on it, or he didn't head it, period. So was OSAP actually ATIP? Probably not. But we have to ask the questions. It may be, and it may pan out that it was or is, but I don't think so. But we will ask those questions, and we will find out the truth. All of us, this community. Second, what does the mention of OSAP in this current secret, not so secret, totally public, recently uncovered, but not really secret document mean anything? Well, let me say this. I've read both reports. I've had them for quite some time, and I know that To the Stars Academy should have them because of who the author is. And I'm not going to get involved in that part of it, but the real name of the program should have been known to them, to the stars, if indeed the two are connected. Or, once again, if TTSA just didn't want to reveal the real truth because it would unwind their narrative. I'm just speculating here. But it's really easy to connect the dots here. Because unless the author comes forward stating that the two reports are based on real tech and projects, or it's just theory and an exciting look at the future, which is the way that I took it. Either way, TTSA has more splaining to do, which they won't. And I get that. But it seems that much of their sources are just based on really good science fiction and theory. All of it. Seriously. And you need to think about that. All right, so how this plays out, I don't know. But it's just like the waters are getting murkier and murkier. I think it's time for DeLong to just go and work on a new album. I think that should be the focus. With that, this is Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Our guest tonight, Chance Gardner. Magical Egypt 1 and 2. The director. We're going to talk about the new episode 5 of Magical Egypt 2. It's Fade to Black on the Game Changer Network and KGRA The Planet. I'll be right back with our guest, Chance Gardner. Stay with me.
You're listening to Jimmy Church, Fade to Black.
Fade to Black will now pause for alien identification.
The station that talks the net. KGRA Radio.
When you take the beans from Central America with dashes of Indonesian and African mixed in and then roast it to the dark side of fade to black, you create the ultimate brew of fringe. Introducing the Fade to Black blend from Rivermoon Coffee. Yes, Rivermoon's darkest customized roast was created for the love of Fade to Black. The alchemy of masterful roasting and smoking the beans is in every sip of this full-bodied dark Java. I need my coffee dark, deep, with distinct bittersweet chocolate highlights, just like the bunker. Leaning further into the darkness of the roast is Fade to Black blend from Rivermoon Coffee. Just click on the banner at jimmychurchradio.com and use the promo code F2BBLEND for 15% off of your order today. Go Beckley Teppy.
Natural Health Solutions with Chris and Ronnie.
Hey, Ronnie, how you doing?
Great, Chris.
Now, you're the CEO of GetTheTea.com, right?
Yes, I am.
What is GetTheTea.com? I mean, is this tea you buy in a store?
Well, no, it's not. Life Change Tea is just that. Life-changing. Life Change Tea is an herbal tea that gently cleanses your body from intruders.
What do you mean by intruders?
Well, intruders are toxins, chemicals, GMOs, heavy metals, and more. They're in our food, in our water, in our air we breathe.
Seriously?
Yeah, seriously.
And Life Change Tea will help you with removing these, as you say, intruders?
That's right, Chris.
Are there side effects with this tea?
Well, you might lose a little weight. When you clean your colon, you lose weight, you feel better, and you have more energy.
Wow. Ronnie, where can people purchase Life Change Tea?
Oh, that's easy. GetTheTea.com. That's GetTheTea.com.
Ronnie, I want to thank you for being on the show. People, don't forget, GetTheTea.com.
9 out of 10 geneticists agree.
Fade to Black is not your father's radio show on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, The Planet.
Win big with KGRA this summer. Tickets and hotel accommodations to the biggest conferences, autographed books and DVDs, chances to win all-inclusive conference cruises, and private dinners with your favorite KGRA hosts. Click the contest tab at kgraradio.com for your chance to win big this summer. Your contact for the best alternative talk radio on the planet. kgraradio.com.
Hi, this is Rob Reiner from Anvil, and you're listening to JimmyChurchRadio.com.
What's up? I'm Chris. What up? This is Kyle Matthew, and you're listening to Jimmy Church Radio.
All right, welcome back. Fade to Black. I'm your Jimmy Church. This segment of Fade to Black is proudly brought to you by Life Change Tea. GetTheTea.com. Go click on the banners right now over at Jimmy Church Radio. Promo code FADER, F-A-D-E-R, will get you free shipping. Let's do this. Very excited. Chance Gardner is back. A multi-award-winning graphic designer, 3D animator, cinematographer, editor. After a 20-year career producing motion graphics and on-air promo for major TV networks, including 20th Century Fox, Paramount Studios, and NBC Universal, he retired from television in 2001 to make documentaries. His first documentary, Magical Egypt, became a cult classic and is still in wide circulation around the world. After 15 years, Gardner has returned to the Magical Egypt project to produce the much-anticipated Magical Egypt Series 2, which features the iconic personalities from the original ME, plus a new generation of researchers and unorthodox thinkers, all united by a common fascination with the unexplained mysteries of the past. Tonight, we're going to talk about the latest installment, Episode 5, and go deeper into the making of Magical Egypt 1 and 2, lost history, civilizations, art, and symbolism. I would like to welcome back the one and only Chance Gardner. Chance, good evening.
Good evening, Jimmy. What a pleasure.
Ah, the pleasure is all mine. Man, you know, you got that voice, man. You got that voice. How are you?
I am fantastic. I'm like any person who's just given birth to something physically larger than me. I'm recovering from the production process. But as you know, you being the first person besides me to have seen the show, episode 5 is now done. And so now my mind is starting to wander onto subjects of sleep and recuperation.
Well, Chance, I gotta hand it to you. My levels of expectation are so high when it comes to what you do in Magical Egypt. I mean, we all know how I feel about the series, but I was very impressed. Okay, and I talked to you about this earlier today, but I didn't get a reaction from you. One of the things, it's the data, it's the knowledge. Okay, that's great. But the cinematography, the graphics, the animation, and the overall look of Magical Egypt is second to none. There's nothing else out there that has this kind of quality. Wow. How do you pull this off? Is it just literally hours and hours and hours of programming to get this stuff done? I don't understand how this level of visual and graphics can be pulled off. How do you do it?
Sheer hours, tons of hours sitting at the computer with rampant disregard for my health and the welfare of those around me. I just sit and sit and sit. When I was at the networks, I had a really wide spectrum of things that I did over the course of the years. But my primary education and my main day job for most of this time was creating visuals that would create a vibe. So, Rupert Murdoch with Fox, every network has this responsibility to create a vibe and an atmosphere and a look, and that attracts people, like you're trying to attract a mate or something. And I took it very seriously. And there's a certain point at which graphics stop becoming graphics and start becoming hypnosis or a type of charm spell. And, as a visual artist, I'm constantly in pursuit of that. I didn't really become radicalized as a visual artist until I was in Egypt with John West. And he explained to me why the Egyptian art works the way it does. And it actually works more like a medicine or a physical stimuli than, like a picture on the wall of your average Howard Johnson's or something. And so I've tried to present the visuals of this show in the same way that Egypt presents visuals. And it speaks directly to a polarity of your consciousness that most people don't use. It's a very right brain way of communicating. And as you may know, your right brain doesn't use language. It uses visuals and icons and symbolism. So That's why the experience of Egypt is so immersive, because it prompts parts of your brain that you don't normally use. And it's like a kind of nutrition that most people never get.
Do you think your DNA has changed, you personally? You've been so wrapped up into Egypt and the visual, the sculpture, the art, the hieroglyphics, all of that it is somehow manifesting its way through you to communicate through the visuals. So there is something going on there, man.
When I first went to Egypt, one of the weirdest things that happened to me was that it occurred to me that Egypt itself, those traditions have a kind of intelligence and a kind of personality is not the right word, but it's like this thing that wants to be known. And anybody who's willing to pick up the mantle, Egypt will talk to you. There was this famous nurse, Florence Nightingale, who was just a regular nurse until she went to Egypt, and it radicalized her in this weird way. Engineers, Napoleon went to Egypt and became changed by it. It's a weird property of this place, and partially the art and partially the ideas that really take whatever raw material you have and I keep using that word radicalize. I know that's a terrible word to be using right now, but it polarizes you, or it brings something to life in you when you're in those places. And I've still never figured out, is it magnetic fields that the temples produce? Is it just the sheer mechanical effect of the aesthetics? But there's a lot of people who've gone on to really shift human history, that the thing that made them so eager to go out and do it, and the thing that made them able to do it, was standing face to face with this enigmatic accomplishment that it forces you to rise to levels that you wouldn't ordinarily.
The other part of it for me is that there was a way of communicating back then that we don't have today. Today it's more of a psyop. They're trying to get you to spend money.
Yeah.
Right. Back then, visual communications was about the brain and emotions and communication and preserving knowledge. Right. It's the opposite of what we do today. And I think that you're capturing that aspect of it with Magical Egypt. You're not promoting yourself there, if you know what I mean. It's not about that. It's about communicating the artistic side of it and how important it was, how technically important it was too.
Right. In a strange way, it's very much like a visual virus that.
Right. That's That's where. That was good. Can I steal that? Visual virus. Visual virus. That's exactly what I'm talking about. When I mentioned, has your DNA changed? You know,
I'm the Typhoid Mary. I'm the Typhoid Mary of Magical Egypt.
Right.
I was forever changed by that, and then I'm doing my best to pass on that virulent infection.
And it's there. I get sucked in.
The difference between science and the humanities, the difference between science and theoretic things, you especially notice on college campuses nowadays, scientists can sit back and let their findings speak for themselves. The essence of science is that you don't have to argue science. Science proves itself. You can always prove that 2 and 2 = 4. There's a place where the rubber meets the road, and the Freemasons call it the difference between speculative and operative. There's things that you can talk about all day long, but then there's things that you can actually do and demonstrate. And the difference between science and the humanities is essentially that science proves itself, whereas the humanities kind of devolve into my theory versus your theory. So another thing that happened to me when I was in Egypt with John West, John's not a visual artist himself, but he always took the time, especially knowing what I did for a living, he always took the time to show me that there's involuntary nervous system reactions, involuntary autonomic reactions that you have to certain proportions and certain harmonies. And we're just wired in this way that our body fluoresces, our brains come online, and we have this actual physical measurable reaction to certain kinds of art. You know, your pupils dilate and your galvanic skin response changes, and very much all the mechanisms that happen in love at first sight. Like there's a biological imperative in us to respond and to have a relationship with these things. And I think you can see, you know, without sounding too pessimistic, you can see in our culture how the demands of industry have kind of disincentivized us to spend time around beautiful things or spend time creating beautiful things for no reason. If there's not somebody there giving you a paycheck to do this, very few people are going to take it upon themselves to take months and months and explore the nature of beauty and try and reconstruct this viral visual image. But for me, it was so important, and this project originally started out being a much more specialized interest show for artists. Here are these techniques from ancient Egypt that turn art into timeless art or turn art into hypnotism. And part of the reason why it's such a interactive and immersive experience is that this isn't passive appreciation of art. This stuff reaches out and grabs you, and it installs itself in your head, whether you want it to or not. And then you start mutating, you know, like a Cronenberg film.
Well, if you think about it, it went down, you know, the roaring 20s here in the United States. Everything was Egypt. The hairstyles, the dress, the Art Deco, all Egypt, right? And they didn't understand why they were infected.
And the great thing is you don't need to. You don't need to know anything about a cold or flu virus. It's immaterial whether you're on board or not. It's going to do what it does. And, you know, if you can step back far enough, I'm sure there's a really important reason in the mechanism of everything why this stuff's necessary. It might be the thing that drives us forward, you know, evolutionarily speaking.
Yeah, well, you know, hieroglyphics, there is something infectious about that too as well, using that term again. There's something about it that draws you in, and you don't even know what you're reading, right? But you're drawn into it. When you look at some of those amazing photographs of King Tut's, golden sarcophagus, right? The face, and you are immediately connected to it, and you don't know why. It's so effective.
My first experience with symbolism was through the tarot. And, a lot of people are familiar with the tarot. The tarot is like a book with no words. And if you know nothing about it, more or less the same thing happens with the alchemical plates. if you have eyes and if you have a brain and a working nervous system and you encounter this art and you interact with it, it starts telling you this story, but it tells you a story through pictures, and not just individual pictures, but the relationship of things to one another. So you see a little boy passing a flower to a girl, or any number of images, and you see them and they speak to you, but in this unique way that's unique to the mysteries throughout history, that right away you know that this is telling you a story. It's like a snake whispering in your ear, but you don't know exactly what the words are. And when you see this stuff, for me, it was the tarot symbolism. For other people, it was the alchemical symbolism. And there's lots of different places and times where this message has come through. It evokes in you this fascination where somebody's telling me a story or a riddle, but I need to do some learning myself to understand what these words are. And so when you start studying the tarot, it draws you back to the original source of this time in humanity when people used visuals instead of letters. It's like the difference between digital and analog, that images and icons affect your right brain. And your right brain, as we discussed, doesn't really use language. It works in symbols and associations. And to the extent that people can become genius, and one of the things we're exploring in the show is that everyone has the potential to become a genius, and it's all about learning to use this other polarity of consciousness that we all have access to, that works in visuals and it works in associations, these webs of meaning and association, and that's where wisdom comes from, and it's where intelligence comes from. And so part of the reason why this is, it's addictive, and I completely agree with you when you say that it's addictive in this weird way, that it is amplifying your intelligence and is building this model in your head that's made of these groups of pictures. And the more complete, the more high res your symbolic model gets in your head, the more you start finding that you understand things in life that are completely unrelated, but that you've learned these underlying causal forces because this story was told to you. And how old is this voice? What was the intelligence that originally put this together? The nature of the story is so smart, and it's so weirdly insightful that this is why I think some people understandably go to the idea that it was some non-human presence that must have originated these ideas. And from there, people go off in different directions about what that non-intelligent entity was. But clearly, people with a certain kind of intellect and a certain kind of mental makeup find this stuff just irresistible, like a catnip. And it turns out it's important because it's not just visually beautiful. And this is what the nature of Magical Egypt is it started out as a research project just in trying to identify these techniques that would help artists out in the modern day. And very quickly, as we started this sort of semi-organized research group, we started finding that when you realize what these symbols are saying, this is an incredibly important image. It's not a bunch of religious proto-mythology, as people generally credit it as, but it's this technical, scientific transmission that is a lot more like finding a crashed UFO than walking into an old church. This is technology and it's science, but it's been misclassified and misunderstood. And so one of the things we're trying to do in the Magical Egypt series is reverse engineer this, just like you might a crashed UFO, and see if there's some fiber optics or Kevlar or something that we can reverse engineer.
Yeah, exactly. And so if we go back let's go to 3000 BC, right? And they are allegedly making these advances. Maybe these advances were already known to them from a prior civilization, which is what I think. But putting that aside, in 3,000 years, going up to year zero, you would have thought that scientific knowledge that they obviously had a grasp of, they should have been to the moon by year zero.
Wow.
You know what I mean? They should have had all of those advances that we have done since 1800 to today, that they had all of that scientific knowledge. They did. They understood astronomy. They understood science. They understood math. What happened? Was there a lost chapter in scientific history, and something just suddenly stopped? And
boom, there it is. Was it a lost chapter? It appears, for all intents and purposes, as if there is a lost chapter in the history of human science. It was very well observed, and exactly the thrust of our show, that To answer your question, though, here's what I think is really meaningful about your question. If you assume over time that our values have shifted, our values as a culture have shifted, so that the most important thing in the world is this big rock up in the sky that's floating around the Earth.
Right.
When you go back farther, there's a much bigger mystery than what's on the moon. There's a much bigger mystery than how many rings around Saturn. There's a much bigger mystery than anything that happens outside of us. And it directly addresses this thing that's a black hole in modern science. And if you talked about just about any really interesting behavioral scientist or sociologist or neurologist, you know what the central mystery of science is to this day is nobody understands what consciousness is. Like, what the hell is that thing that makes me aware of me and that I'm not you? I can talk to you and I can understand what you're saying, but I'm me and you're you, and you're trapped in this meat wagon that carries your perspective and your perceptions around. And I am, but the fact that we're self-monitoring and thinking and that we have this voice going on in our head and that sometimes for no reason we fall in love or we laugh at a joke or we create this meaningful art, there's a mystery there that is so high science that science doesn't quite know what to do with it. They don't even know what classification to put it in. So religion takes a stab at it. You know, all kinds of people want to step up and say, here's what I think this is. But there was a science in Egypt that seems, you know, if you look at the pyramids and you look at the temples and look what they're capable of technically, what wouldn't they have been able to do? But the important thing to remember is back then their values were so different that they put their science in service of discovering the mysteries of the most mysterious thing there is, which is the inner universe of consciousness. And so our Western world, our big accomplishment was getting to the moon, which is becoming more and more speculative nowadays.
Right.
If you watch a lot of YouTube. But assuming that actually happened, it's just so much more important that we find out about this incredibly bizarre inner landscape that we might not even have to ourselves. There's this world going on in the darkness of your head. And so as our research project continued to progress, what we'd realized was exactly that there was an ancient science in the past that's just absolutely not regarded in the modern day as being a science, although it produced things like the pyramids that are clearly, you know, scientifically amazing and masterful. And ultimately, whatever's going on the moon has nothing to do with me. It does not affect me from a day-to-day basis. But if there's a science that can tell me about the way my brain operates, you know, especially me as a creative, you as a creative, I've heard some of the music you produce and play yourself, and you're around artists all the time, and you understand that how a fraction of a second of access to a certain state of mind can change your life, can make you move out of your trailer house into a big house up on the hills with a big swimming pool. Access to these certain states of creativity were what entire governments were based on in Egypt. The Maya, you know, the whole government, there would be people that took mushrooms and did forecasts while they were whacked on magic mushrooms.
Right.
This reverence for the mysteries of the inner universe of consciousness are one of the things that all these old cultures had in common. And so when our research group started finding the same references to the same science in the Mayan and Aztec cultures, in the Hindu Vedantic cultures, the yogic cultures, and the Taoist, you know, Far Eastern cultures, they not only all were fascinated by the same type of science, but they used art in this way that no other era really has used as well, where as an artist, I was particularly interested in this, and as a graphic designer and a visual communicator, there was this period of time where art and science were fused beautifully and perfectly and so utterly symbiotic that you realize there are certain kinds of science that you'll never understand if you read them in linear language, but I can draw you a schematic, just like I could draw you a schematic of your toaster or your, you know, 1932 Edsel or whatever, that allows you to understand how this mechanism works. And I don't know about you, but I was never given an owner's manual for this just super complicated thing up in my head.
Right.
I know all kinds of things to do to kill it, but I don't know anything to do to make it better or make it act better or give me access to these moments that are career shifting and humanity shifting moments of insight. But in the past, in all of ancient cultures, not just ancient Egypt, there seems to be not only the science that understood consciousness, but that used art to convey this consciousness, or to the science of consciousness. And they used it, not just art, but statuary and architecture. So in the Magical Egypt series, the seed that started the Magical Egypt series was this discovery that the front pylon of an Egyptian temple, this iconic front facade of an Egyptian temple, is itself a kind of schematic where if you put it over the human brain, it actually points to all these special places in the brain. And it's all the parts of the brain that produce consciousness, including the most central thing that produces consciousness, which is considered the third eye, where the pineal gland and pituitary and thalamus all meet,
right,
which actually looks like an eye. You've probably seen that picture there.
I'm holding it up to the
all of this science focuses on that area that produces consciousness.
Yeah, so when you look at the famous Eye of Ra, right? The eye. I'm holding. I have one here. I'm holding up to the camera. That's the pineal gland.
It's the pineal, exactly right. And in architecture, in art, in sacred statuary art and architecture, in the Far East, the Near East, and in the West, this seems to be this common secret that people either haven't noticed or aren't drawing attention to. And that's kind of just like the pylon is the gateway that you enter the temple, this particular type of art is the gateway through which you enter into this science of understanding your own psyche, but more importantly, understanding that there's parts of your psyche that you don't even know about. So that's why the Magical Egypt new series starts with this idea that there's a door in your head that no one told you about.
Well, yeah. I almost went in another direction, but we've got 2 minutes before the break. When you and your artist were sitting around contemplating the pineal gland and the Eye of Ra, and you start to make this anatomy connection, what went through your heads? Because it's so obvious once you see it, right? Once you see it and you see the dissection, that had to have been the craziest epiphany ever.
Epiphany is exactly the right word. I felt like I had just brought a toaster into the bathtub with me. I literally felt electrified. Our research group was interesting because there was 3 of us and we all came to it from different ways. It was like these 3 animals in the desert that all came to the same watering hole, and we kept noticing each other there. So I came to it through my pineal gland discovery of the pylon. Gary Osborne came to it through his discovery of the Eye of Ra. That's that very publicized side shot. And then Brad Clausen came to it through another finding. So we all proved the same thing, but we all used different examples of art to prove it. And then once we got together and started sharing notes, the whole thing blew wide open. And within about a week, we'd realized we have not only a series here, but we have several series worth of fantastic information that is legitimate science. It's a strange thing when artists are called upon to present science, but in the spirit of ancient Egypt, there's never been a time where art and science were more perfectly intertwined to transmit this message. And the message is interesting because it's hidden in plain sight and everyone sees it, but it's like a puzzle that no one solved. Like the sword and the stone. Everyone steps up to pull the sword out, and some lucky person pulls it out, and not only does their life change, but the whole kingdom changes.
That's a perfect spot here to take a break, and we'll pick this up when we come back. Our guest tonight, Chance Gardner. We're talking about Episode 5 of Magical Egypt Series 2. Yeah, it's finished. Hey, Chance. Well, You know what? I'll ask you when we come back. Stay right there. I'm your host, Jimmy Church, on the Game Changer Network and KGRA The Planet. This is Fade to Black. Stay with us.
This is Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, the Global Radio Alliance.
This is KGRA Digital Broadcasting Station, Salt Lake City, Utah, Van Buren, Arkansas.
Hello, Fadernauts. This is Jimmy Church, and I'm introducing New Pharma, a company whose products are based on science. Human function based on the endocannabinoid system, or ECS. New Pharma firmly believes in this science, and their research indicates that support of the ECS provides the beneficial effects for a healthy lifestyle. New Pharma's science includes relief capsules for pain relief, Sleep capsules, which are natural support for occasional sleeplessness. Foundation is support for your ECS, and Fit capsules support your active lifestyle. Just click on the banner at jimmychurchradio.com and use the promo code F2B for a 33% discount on all of their products. Or visit newpharma.com for all of the knowledge on the science. That's GNUpharma.com. Go Beckley Tappy.
Hello, I'm Katie, and you're listening to my main man, Jimmy Church, on jimmychurchradio.com.
Hi, this is Ray Hobbs here, repping the planet, and you're listening to my good friend, Jimmy Church, Fade to Black, on the Game Changer Network and the KGRA digital broadcast station.
This is Toby Kebbell. You're listening to jimmychurchradio.com. Don't hurt me, Jimmy. I'm only little.
Hey, I'm Adrian Grenier, and this is Ari Gold. We're the Honey Brothers. Yes. We're of the Honey Brothers. Hey, I'm Adrian Grenier, and I'm Ari Gold. We're the Honey Brothers, and you're listening to Jimmy Church. The Revolution.
Ancient Life Oil. Life-changing. The real oil. CBD is truly ancient life oil from the source. This oil has no psychoactive effect and is also legal in all 50 states. When you're healthy, you're happy. The truth about this wonderful plant is that it wants to give back to mankind life, longevity, and happiness. Ancient Life Oil are golden grade, all organic, non-GMO, and infused with high-quality liquid coconut oil. It's simple. Just go to ancientlifeoil.com today. That's ancientlifeoil.com. The best, purest, organic, and non-GMO CBD in the world. Go Beckley Tappy. The statements made regarding these products have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. These products are not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease. Please consult your healthcare professional about potential interactions or other possible complications before using any product.
This is Micah Hanks of the Gralien Report, and you're listening to Jimmy Church on Fade to Black, across the globe on the Game Changer Radio Network and the one and only KGRA Radio, The Planet.
Welcome back, Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. This segment of Fade to Black is proudly brought to you by River Moon Coffee, makers of the Fade to Black blend. That's right, it's dark and smoky. Let's go to the River Moon Coffee banner over at jimmychurchradio.com. Use the promo code F2BBLEND, 15% off of your order today. Chance Gardner is our guest. Chance, director of Magical Egypt 1 and 2, Series 1 and 2. I don't even know how to call it. I guess it's Series 1 and 2, right? I want to be correct. Or is it just Magical Egypt 1 and Magical Egypt 2?
Well, each series has a number of episodes in it. So the first episode, the first series of Magical Egypt that happened back in 1999-2000 had 9 episodes. And then I took a big long nap, and then this new one has 5 episodes so far. There's going to be a run of 6, and then we start Series 3, which is all about the Great Pyramids, because, as you know, there's so much in the Great Pyramids that it deserves its own series.
Right, has to. Yeah, that one's going to be about 40 episodes. I can't wait, and hopefully I get to tag along for that ride. I wanted to ask you this really quick. Is there going to be a promo code for the Fadernauts?
There is a promo code, and the promo code is Fade to Black.
Is that the number 2 or TO?
Fade number 2, FADE number 2, Black.
One word.
Here's an interesting thing too. Episode 6 is essentially finished now, and because of how much information came to light as we were putting together the end of the series, we have a special episode that's episode 7, but it's going to be restricted access because it's extremely taboo and it's activity based, and it won't be commercially available, but it will be available to the people who've bought the series before episode 7 comes out. So speaking of promo codes and stuff, we've built in a number of awesome incentives and a couple of real nuggets of forbidden gold for people who like to take advantage of things like that.
Oh, man, you've got me hooked right there. Okay, so it's Fade to Black, one word with the number 2.
Correct.
Fade to Black. All right, everybody just go and get it. When does episode 5 release?
It is done right this moment as we sit here. I'm a broken husk of a man. I've been awake for this last month, and it is finished right now. I think that it's going through the duplication and printing and stuff, so I believe it'll be commercially available Thursday or Friday for streaming and DVD.
It's amazing. I mean, just amazing. I mean, my expectations are so high, and it was right there.
I sure appreciate Jimmy. People, Jimmy's the only one who's seen this, so I was really wondering. You never know, until someone says something, if it's a work of just utter insanity or something else. And thank you very much for those kind words, Jimmy.
Well, and that promo that you guys did with me just makes me laugh every time that I hear.
That is one of my proudest moments. A figure of your stature saying something nice about the show. That was awesome.
Well, it was from the heart. I said it just exactly how I feel. And I remember, and I'm not kidding, I'll repeat it, which is this. When I was watching, Rita and I had an apartment in North Hollywood back in 2003. And I was watching, and I was just like looking over my shoulder, waiting for that front door to get kicked down. And it was just like I just thought it was that groundbreaking, and I was waiting for my DVD player to burn up, like Mission Impossible. So now let's get back to where we were. I think this you brought up an important point, which I find fascinating, which is it took artists to figure this out. It wasn't the scientific community. It wasn't archaeologists. It wasn't Egyptologists. It was the artist crowd that figured out some of these amazing connections. And isn't that fascinating? Almost done by design, I would think.
It is that's a really insightful thing, that last thing you said. It is as if this message was encrypted in a way that only artists would understand it. And it's not just art that Egypt speaks through. I should point that out. When you listen to Robert Bauval talk about the pyramid speaks through math. There's some incredibly complicated math that has to do with physical constants, the speed of light, and all of these things that the Great Pyramid incorporates. And so mathematicians have come along and, say what you want about Zahi or any of the Egyptologists. They're all fine, upstanding people, God-fearing taxpayers and all that. But they have a very limited speciality. And not many of them are doing really high-level math. And so it makes sense that a mathematician is going to come along and see things in the math that no Egyptologist is going to be doing differential equations or, probability and statistics in school. And so they just don't speak one of the languages that Egypt speaks in. Art speaks. There are so many different languages that art speaks in. It speaks in symbolism, of course, but there are these things like negative space. Have you ever seen that picture of, like, when you look at it, it's an old lady, but then you shift your eyes and it's actually a young girl sitting with a rabbit on a park, or, those pictures that can look like one thing and that same picture looks like something else too. Salvador Dali used to do this a lot. You have these groupings in a picture that look like one thing when you first walk up to it. And then the more you look at it, the more you realize, oh, there's this entirely other picture hidden in it. It's something called a negative space. I call it a cipher because this particular way to hide information in art is really like a cipher in that Da Vinci Code sense, that it's a code, it's a visual, a cipher, a code, this little visual secret that's hidden in a picture. And so we know that the culture in Egypt, Plato and Pythagoras and all of these intelligent people ever since dynastic Egypt have all sort of had this understanding that if they could get to Egypt and somehow absorb the keys to understanding the message, then they would have access to this incredible science, this incredibly profound science that teaches you about the structure and nature of consciousness, and not about the physical world, but about the invisible things that form the visible world. And so when you understand that there is a message here, and then when you read traditional Egyptology's interpretation of the message, it's kind of rendered this kind of immaterial thing. It's all proto-religion and mythos, and aren't they cute? They wanted to say something to make them feel better about the afterlife. And so if you come at this without all of those institutional presuppositions and without being poisoned by this one culture or another. If you come at it with an open mind and you're just earnestly studying the techniques of the art and the message of the art, of course, you need to know the message of the art to understand the art. So none of us were looking to turn Egyptology on its ear or make anybody else look bad. It's just that, as I've said, if you're an artist, you understand that art speaks through all these languages. And if you know how to speak that language, then there's no ifs, ands, or buts about what the message is. And that's why, Egypt is such a rich and intelligent subject and such a mystery and so much like a downed UFO that instead of assuming that we know everything there is and it can't teach us anything, if you come at it with the opposite state of mind and you just want to find what's there without trying to project anything onto it, it doesn't keep it a secret. It'll tell you. It's happy to tell you and it wants to tell you. And for our purposes, what makes it especially interesting is that it uses beauty as this delivery mechanism for the most important information there is.
There the parts that feature John Anthony West in episode 5. I thought that I had heard everything from Jaws before, and here I stopped taking notes because I was listening to what he had to say. He was addressing exactly what we're talking about right now, but it was fresh. How much stuff do you have of Jaws like that in your archives? What are you sitting on?
For the entire time since Magical Egypt, John and I obviously became really close because we spent so much time in Egypt, and he was like my Grateful Dead. I would follow him around just before even anybody asked me to, or before it was even an official project. I just started following the guy around, and I just, for some reason, you know how you meet people sometimes and you know that your fate is tied up with them, and I, without completely knowing why, I would really follow him around, and it clicked really early on that I was incomplete as an artist because I didn't understand what is the most accomplished artistic delivery in the history of humanity. And so when John would show me these things, he would always say it from a different standpoint. He kind of looked at it in a different way, and he called it sacred and he called it theological. I started noticing from the way that he described art to me that what's the difference between a science and a philosophy is that one is a bunch of people talking about something and another one is something that actually works. It actually does something to you or actually has some effect or it's used as a tool. And so John was really instrumental in showing me that this is a technology. This isn't just art and it's not just theology. It's a technology. And it's a technology that allows you to do things in your own life that are on par with those amazing expressions of genius that we see in ancient Egypt.
The ability for him to realize early on, now look, he studied it and he had Shaler and others, Schaller to reference to, but he understood that the word symbol or symbolist and symbolist Egypt was the most important aspect. And he used to drive that home for me. He used to go, dude, you're missing the point. You're missing the point. He realized that early on, and he's able to convey that, but I'm not sure he's able to speak it, but I'm not sure that everybody understands exactly what he's trying to say. It's about the symbolism. It's symbolist.
It's very much like that old metaphor of the blind men and the elephant, that all of these blind men come up to an elephant and each one are standing at a different part. So the one who's standing at the trunk says, well, the elephant is like a snake. And the one that's standing by his leg says, no, the elephant's like a tree. And the one that's standing by his rib cage says, no, the elephant's like a big wall. And the one that's standing at the tail is like, no, the elephant is like a rope. And everyone comes to it from their own perspective and they see the things that they can see. And if you look at this from a non-personal perspective, the elephant is all of those things at once. And John had this knack. First of all, John took Schwaller de Lubicz, who was an alchemist pre-war. The guy was writing before World War II even happened. Schwaller de Lubicz, I don't know if you know much about the Theosophical Society, but Annie Besant and all of these esoteric and occult personalities, and all of them were just absolute geniuses. Around the turn of the century, there was this very thriving community in America and all over the world that started looking at what we now call occultism as instead of this taboo thing that religion forbids us to do, it's this body of information that seems to have always been there, and it is embodied in these temples, but it's not this theoretical stuff. This is an actual science that teaches you how to do things, and it's a science that instead of working with test tubes and robots and stuff, it teaches you the tools to explore this bizarre inner universe that we all have. And in the West, nobody really became aware or fascinated with this until the introduction of LSD and even, marijuana and things that force your eyes, instead of looking out, to look inward. And I think maybe we would have never understood how important it was had not LSD happened to Western culture. And then John West himself, by translating Schwaller de Lubic's books, which were incredibly complicated, incredibly smart, and I think only John West could have done what he did to make them as palatable as he did. And so part of communicating to the public is that you just can't start talking about high-level math or these incredibly scientific things with most people. John's real genius was to be able to articulate these incredibly intelligent ideas in this way that everyone understood. And what a lot of people don't know about him is he was very above board and very scientific in nature, but he was a repository of occult lore and symbolism. So he really was a symbolist. And although he didn't talk about it unless you really dug down, he knew the tarot inside and out. He knows the alchemical traditions. And so John was always this gold mine for me, but sometimes it was like pulling teeth to get him to talk about it, because and Magical Egypt is this weird baby between John and I, where John has this vast body of knowledge, and I kept asking him to dig into areas that would help illuminate the occult traditions, because alchemy and Kabbalah and the tarot and all of these subsequent visual symbol systems are all telling the same story that originates in Egypt. But for some reason, the massive footprint of modern Western religion has cast this shadow over the entire subject and miscategorized this most important information into something. It's of the devil, it's of the snake, it's bad for you, you should stay away from it at all costs. And John had an even-handedness enough to show that, look, if you disregard all of that hysteria, this is not anything taboo, it's not something that should be forbidden, this is something that you're not really a finished person intellectually until you understand this way of thinking. So operating system, that's what I wanted to get to. This is an operating system in the same way that you have a Mac operating system or any other computer. And so if you can do an upgrade to your own operating system by installing the Egypt 2.0 instead of Western World 1.0, it makes you physically smarter and makes you better at whatever you do. And that was one of John's, that's certainly how he changed my life, and how this information seems to be changing the lives of people that really engage with it.
How do you think it happened where the decline in Egypt, which, you've obviously documented and witnessed, the decline where they started off at the top of the heap and just completely declined? Was it the invasions from Persia and Greece and Rome that caused the amnesia from everything that they accumulated before?
There is an entire episode at some point that we actually have about half finished right now, where different people talk about different reasons for that decline. There was clearly a decline. The stuff at the beginning of Egypt, the stuff at the beginning of Sumeria, way before Babylon was even a word.
Right.
The stuff at the very beginning, and in the Far East, the I Ching is so old that no one knows where it comes from. There are these incredibly almost unfathomable intellectual accomplishments that come from so long ago that our history has been erased or forgotten, which is why we keep saying, forgotten history in science. And so we can see things like the pyramids and the temples in Egypt, some of the Vedantic temples, just absolutely insane. And even now, modern Taoist temples are this sort of didactic art where if you actually look at a Taoist temple, it's this 3D sculpture that teaches you how to do this certain kind of tantra that through sexuality opens up parts of your consciousness. It's the coolest, most counterculture thing you could ever imagine. And it is what these churches radiate. It's what the ancient art radiates. And this science of understanding ourselves and understanding consciousness has become this sort of big taboo, and one of the things that we hope to do is to say that this really is something more akin, as I keep saying, more akin to a crashed UFO than a bunch of outdated ideas.
The didactic is a very important word here. Give our audience the definition.
Didactic simply means to teach. It's something that's meant to teach. So oftentimes when you see a cartoon in the New York Times, the point of that cartoon isn't to be funny. It's through the use of humor. It gives you an insight into something. So in episode 2 of the new series, Brad Clausen is this amazing artist and very famous illustrator. And he shows this simple statue that everyone's seen. Everyone walks by it on your way into Karnak Temple. And it's a ram with its horns in a certain configuration. Underneath the ram's chin, there's a little statue, and the statue's doing things under the ram's chin. And then down onto this platform, Brad Clausen showed that this statue is not just a pretty statue of a ram, but if you take that picture and set it right next to a picture of the human brain stem and the human brain, this statue is an exact replication of the brain stem, which is the most, one of the most important parts of our perception of consciousness. And so if it were just a beautiful picture on the wall of Velvet Elvis, say, something like that, or dogs playing poker, it has this certain value in aesthetics. It's a pretty low value. But the art in the past, whether it be temples or statues or sacred art, was didactic, which means it was meant to teach. So if you understand the keys to understanding the symbolism, art was the old books. Before there was written language, there was still this art that communicated this information. And some information is too technical to be transmitted in two-dimensional art. So they were so intelligent that they actually use three-dimensional artwork as a three-dimensional model. So as I'd mentioned, Brad Clausen, but also Gary Osborne, and then my own discovery of the pylon, in each case, this art or architecture or statuary was didactic, meaning that it taught you this series of secrets or incredibly profound information if you were an initiate or if you were educated enough or if you're just naturally intelligent enough to understand that there's a puzzle there that needs to be solved. So didactic means to teach. And the reason why the initiatory structures and all intelligent people have felt compelled to go to Egypt is that there's a certain kind of teaching, and in my opinion, it was never raised to a higher state with the synergy of art and information as ancient Egypt, which is this whole place. It's like a living book. And instead of you carrying the book around, you walk through the book. Much more like video games and the internet of today. It's an immersive thing that you walk through rather than you carry it and turn pages.
Is there a reference somewhere of everything that is represented? In other words, like Dendera, right? And you walk through where you've got pillars, top to bottom, 50 foot tall, covered with information, pillar after pillar after pillar, the ceilings, the walls. Is there a reference to what is actually written on each one of those pillars, on each one of the walls, on everything that's on the ceiling?
There's so many people that have been studying this for so long, and a lot of it is misguided, but a lot of it is genuine. There's every time I stop looking into it for a year or two, I'm always amazed when I come back to the internet to find these incredible epiphanies that people have made. And as you observed, frequently the best traveling forward, the best discoveries are made by people who are that are outsiders to Egyptology, which is odd. So musicians and artists and mathematicians and physicists and astronomers. So Dendera in particular, well, first of all, to answer your question, any tarot card system, one of the old good tarot cards made by English people, MacGregor Mathers or Arthur Edward Waite, or any of the Italian tarot, is a collection of these symbolic ideas from Egypt. So if you can't make it to Egypt, and if you're a patient and curious person, get yourself a tarot deck and study the symbolism of the major arcana, and you'll walk away with a pretty complete overview of what was taught in Egypt. Dendera in particular shows their fascination with the stars and with motion, and somehow the stars are inexplicably, not somehow, it makes sense that the stars are wound up in our perceptions of time, and how do you divide time, and does geometry apply to time when you divide it? Like, why is our clock and our calendar and everything divided into 12s and 60s? Why is the circumference around the earth measured in minutes, and so when you go to a college, you go to a college campus, there's not just one big building there. There's lots of different buildings. There's the astronomy department. There's the mathematics department. There's the biology department. So Dendera in particular is amazing because it shows all these constellations, and it talks about how our consciousness shifts in conjunction with the stars. And it's very much the birthplace of what we think of now as astrology, which has been, greatly debased and reduced to something stupid in the modern time. But it used to be this important thing where astronomy and psychology were inextricably linked in the ancient world. And I think as science progresses, we're getting back to understanding how fluctuating magnetic fields affect consciousness. Oh, this is the answer to your question before. Why were they so smart? It might very well turn out to be that fluctuating magnetic fields on the Earth have an effect on the brain, and also density of oxygen. There were times in the past where the density of oxygen on Earth was much greater, and that's why, like, if you go to the La Brea tar pits, which I think is not far from your house, you'll see sloths and mice and little things that are bigger than lions and tigers, because if you go back far enough to when the La Brea tar pits were first active, there was a density of oxygen in the Earth that just had this effect of making things bigger. And I suspect that the intelligence that came from that time has something to do with either magnetic fields or density of oxygen. And the third thing, this really interesting character, Tony Wright, who's a fascinating guy in his own right, he'll be coming up in an upcoming episode, talked about the idea that if you go back far enough in human history, we were hunter-gatherers, and we tended to eat fresh, live food. We picked our food off of trees. We went out and got it. And the shift from that to an agrarian society where we just lived on wheat all the time, there's nutritional things in wheat and a wheat-based diet that kind of atrophy certain parts of your brain that are involved in really high intelligence. So it is actually measurably different how the brain develops if you eat fresh live foods your whole life versus eating meat and grains diet. And so there are these weird little physical effects that may have had a huge effect on why we seem to have been so much smarter in the past. And then there's also all those amazing things, like maybe it was aliens that told us, or maybe it was, angels or jinn, or maybe the mushrooms. Maybe eating psychedelic mushrooms gave us this increased intelligence at a certain point. It's one of the questions nobody's answered, but I don't necessarily think you have to know where the information came from. Like, I don't know where this UFO came from, but now I can enjoy the benefits of fiber optics and Kevlar and whatnot because we reverse engineered it. So wherever it came from, I'm putting it to work in my own life, and that's part of what Magical Egypt tries to express.
I read the other day, interesting how you just put that about magnetic fields. Today, our brains are the smallest they have been ever. They're shrinking.
Can I tell you something really cool? We're going into these weird places, not because we're weirdos, but this is where the art and the message are taking us. There's this whole tradition, the yogic traditions of Tantra and whatnot, that are all about how these certain types of exercises, certain type of diet, certain types of meditation amplify the natural magnetic fields that your brain produces and literally make you smarter. And when you start doing this work, you start connecting to these things that in the West we're told are just, craziness or supernaturalness, like epiphany, intuition, like really heightened intuition, or just knowing what someone's thinking before they say it. There's these natural properties of consciousness that are very dependent on magnetism and, electrochemistry and whatnot. And as in a lot of things in Egypt, the more our science progresses and the more we understand about ourselves, the more we realize that this obsession with unusual states of consciousness wasn't religious, but it was very practical and was really what was behind why they were so smart.
Let's take a break right here. I knew it was going to be this kind of conversation tonight. Let's just keep it going. Our guest tonight, Chance Gardner, director of Magical Egypt. Magical Egypt and Magical Egypt 2. See, I got it right, Chance. We'll be right back.
Hi everybody, this is Rob Halford, the Metal Guard on JimmyChurchRadio.com.
This is KGRA Digital Broadcasting Station. Salt Lake City, Utah. Van Buren, Arkansas.
Okay, nurse, let's get this man to the ER stat.
Right away, doctor.
We see this every day. Heart attack or angina pain due to blocked and clogged arteries. Chelation can remove obstructions or blockages from arteries and help avoid painful and expensive surgery. Now there's Angioprim. It's a liquid oral chelation product that you take with juice. You start to feel the results fast. Angioprim increases blood flow all over the body, and that means more energy and strength to take on the day with less aches and pains. 60 years of research has gone into chelation, and Angioprim is the result. A safe and easy way to unblock your veins and arteries from buildup that slow circulation.
Paging Dr. Jones. Please report to the emergency room right away.
Log on now for a special radio offer from Angioprim. That's angioprim.com/radio. ANGIOPRIM. Angioprim.com/radio or call 877-882-7221. That's 877-882-7221.
So, you love talk radio? Then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live is always on, 24/7 with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on the smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com. Be sure to download the free apps from Google Play or the iTunes App Store.
Your contact for current news and trending topics. KGRAradio.com.
Hello, Fadernauts. This is Jimmy Church, and I'm introducing New Pharma, a company whose products are based on science. Human function based on the endocannabinoid system, or ECS. New Pharma firmly believes in this science, and their research indicates that support of the ECS provides the beneficial effects for a healthy lifestyle. New Pharma's science includes relief capsules for pain relief, sleep capsules, which are natural support for occasional sleeplessness. Foundation is support for your ECS, and Fit capsules support your active lifestyle. Just click on the banner at jimmychurchradio.com and use the promo code F2B for a 33% discount on all of their products. Or visit newpharma.com for all of the knowledge on the science. That's GNUpharma.com. Go Beckley Tappy. Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi available, you can still listen to every minute of Fade to Black by just calling 605-562-4482. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan and no extra cost if you have unlimited minutes. Just call 605-562-4482. You can listen to me, Jimmy Church, on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Go Beckley Tappy.
You want to know a secret? I love ponies. I really love ponies. I'm serious. I couldn't stay sane without ponies to brush.
Why Fade to Black? Because you never got that pony, damn it.
This is Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, the Global Radio Alliance.
Welcome back, Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Our guest tonight, Chance Gardner. This segment of Fade to Black is proudly brought to you by New Pharma. GNU Pharma. Just click on the banner over at jimmychurchradio.com and go read about all of the science behind New Pharma. The promo code is F2B, F the number 2B, 33% off of your order. Talking to Chance Gardner, director of Magical Egypt and Magical Egypt 2. See, I got it right, Chance.
Yep.
The episode 5, where it continues on with, I want to stress this. It's how to interpret the art that is going on there through sculpture and the hieroglyphics and the messages that are there, again, didactic. And I think that it not only does it work, but we are so drawn into the beauty right? The aesthetics of it, that we're trying to figure out the actual messages. And I'm wondering if we are getting a lot of that subconsciously, and maybe I think that hieroglyphics have the ability to activate. It's like it's software. And that knowledge, that technical level, we're talking about allegedly Stone Age man. And that's what is going on here. And that's what you do so well in episode 5.
I try and let the art do what it was supposed to do. And as you said, a fantastic metaphor for this is software. I keep using that word, an upgrade to your consciousness. So I don't know if you remember, I know you're more or less my age, when video games first came out, like ColecoVision and Nintendo, and remember those really simple video games that just had squares and blips and whatnot? If you take a Cray computer, you take the world's best computer, the world's fastest computer, and you install the operating system from an old Nintendo video game, it'll play that old Nintendo video game. And it'll be great at it, and it'll seem awesome if you don't know any better, and you'll play ping pong, with your paddles on both sides and not realizing what this computer is actually capable of because you're limited by the operating system. If you take that same computer and put a Macintosh operating system on it, suddenly there is just a night and day difference between the suite of tools that you have available to you, the capabilities of the processor, and even Mac is kind of an embarrassing limitation compared to Silicon Graphics computers or Cray systems or whatever N-Wave now that uses artificial intelligence. So our brains have always been like the one thing that never changes. Fashion changes, the stars are always rotating, technology changes, architectural styles change, but the structure of human consciousness never changes. And this weird machinery that we have, the only thing that changes is the operating system that we run on this computer. By the way, the question you asked me right before the break, are we seem to be getting smarter, or why does it seem like we're getting stupider? And actual brain capacities reduced over the ages. It's not just because of this software. It's not just because of this upgrade or lack of upgrade. One of the guests we have in episode 5 that's talking about inner alchemy is this gentleman, Mantak Chia, he's one of the few Easterners that really lets everybody in on this secret of amplifying your intelligence and doing these amazing things that'll make your body almost like a second puberty for your body and for your psyche. And that's a whole other conversation. But Mantak Chia pointed out this thing that Rick Strassman, the DMT guy, also pointed out, that since the invention of artificial light, from Edison's first light bulb, our pineal gland's been shrinking, basically. So from the invention of artificial light, and this may have gone all the way back to fires in caves, the moment that we start affecting our intake of light and darkness, you know how the Masonic floorboards are all checkered, this equal distribution of light and darkness around it's a very important metaphor. All things go through these cycles, and our consciousness and our intellect have these cycles that are very much dependent on light and the absence of light. So an interesting fact about why we keep devolving, even though technology keeps getting better, is that we spend so much time around artificial light sources that our pineal glands have been shrinking for all this time. And it is becoming sort of alarming that now more than ever, it's become really necessary for us to turn our attention to this ancient upgrade to our operating system, because the mechanisms and the artificiality of life are literally shrinking our brains and our testosterone levels, by the way, but that's a whole other conversation.
The ability today, this has a lot to do with Egypt, so stay with me. The ability today to have access to information. You don't necessarily need to read. They don't even teach writing in school anymore. That blows my mind, right? So we need our brains less and less. The calculations are done for us. The thinking is done for us. The research is done for us. Everything is given to us. So we don't have to. Logic isn't even needed anymore. Is that what is causing this the backward development of our brain and its size? And could this be what happened to Egypt?
It seems like it very well could be. Some external factors, just the invention of emojis did more to ruin the English language. Like, as an American, when I go to England, I'm constantly browbeaten for how much Americans have degenerated the English language. And as much as I hated that, and as much as I, kind of ridicule it when no one's listening to me, I find myself doing the same thing about the generation right after me that uses emojis instead of writing things. And as soon as we've started emailing, we've stopped this beautiful art of writing. There are letters from the 1800s and the gold rush and Lincoln's day show people had this amazing gift for language. And language itself is this incredible operating system where before any television, if you were to judge just from correspondences, everyone was a genius back then. Everyone had this poet inside of them, and your intellect can only, like a little goldfish in a little bowl, it's not going to get very big. Your means of expression have some limiting factor on your intelligence. So when you're writing, in fact, we say this in episode 1, the difference between a hot medium and a cold medium, according to Marshall McLuhan, is that a hot medium is like reading or language, telling stories, because your brain has to light up and stay active to constantly visualize and think about and detect the ramifications of everything you're seeing. Television is a cold medium because it tells you everything and it shuts down all your synaptic associations and the insights and everything that you get from participating in that kind of art. And so when we engage in this old way of learning stories, it actually does cause an upgrade in us that, again, that was such a brilliant thing, the upgrade to our operating system.
I watched, it was one of the cool documentaries that has been released lately. It was a Nat Geo thing, or maybe Smithsonian, one of the two, doesn't matter. Going out and digitizing the Great Pyramid. They digitized a few things, but they digitized all of the pyramids in Egypt. But when they digitized the Great Pyramid, there was one thing that blew my mind, and we have to just stop and grab hold of ourselves and realize this. Every layer of stone, every layer for 400 feet is completely straight and level. It has not altered. Now, wrap your head around that for a second. So it's digitized, right? And they've got up on the screen, doing lines across the screen on each level, and they have not moved. They're still level to the earth. They haven't altered. Now, first off, it hasn't altered through earthquakes and natural disasters and everything else, right? The foundation hasn't changed. That is remarkable in of itself. But we have to go back to allegedly 2650 BC when they built this, that they built it level to the earth and it hasn't changed. And they're completely level and flat. To each other. Each block is correct. Block after block after block after block. 2.5 million of these, and they haven't changed over time. That, it just right there in its most basic fact is remarkable. Now we're talking about a technology that was given to them or learned that stands to this day where it's earthquake proof. I can't stress it any more than that. It's remarkable.
One of the things that we've set out to show in the show is exactly what you're addressing. There's just no way to argue with the pyramids. I have a suspicion that if the people that are the most visible people in Egyptology could find a way to say the pyramid's not really there, and they constantly are denying all the important measurements in the pyramid. They're constantly saying there's a natural explanation for why these things are the way they are. There is clearly evidence of this intellect and a state of science and a state of technology that exists in the past. I think one of the reasons why Magical Egypt was successful was that It's like talking to an insane person that won't admit that the sun's out, and you're standing there and you're getting a sunburn and you're talking to someone who's claiming that it's nighttime. And this is the reason why so many people from outside of Egyptology have come into Egyptology, because it's maddening when you can look at something that clearly subverts everything we know about our history, that clearly raises this red flag that there is a part of this riddle that we're not being told. And maybe it's a good thing. It might well turn out that the absence of an answer, when we watch Lost or any of those really good episodic shows, I just discovered that, or any David Lynch film, having the answer withheld from you forces you to contemplate things and look deeper into the specifics, where in a movie that's a typical American film, when you're given all of the information, you don't need to think about it anymore because you've received closure. So very much having to do with the last question that you asked, there is something about this place that keeps forcing us to dig deeper. And it seems as though this thing is so important that there are parts of our culture that, for reasons I don't entirely understand, really don't want us to know about that. And that, to me, is part of the mystery, that why do so many cultures, be it academic cultures or political governing cultures, try and keep our history from us? What is that thing that we might find out about ourselves or about the past that's so forbidden that we're not allowed to know about it? And I think that is a huge part of the allure of this. And because we have this institutional resistance from the people that are supposed to be experts, that are supposed to tell us, we have to take it upon ourselves.
Chance, I'm going to jump in. All of that is great, and you make a great point, but I want your opinion. Why do you think that is? Why are they holding it from us? What's your opinion?
There's this idea called intellectual apartheid, and a good example of this is back when, in the pirate days, people were generally uneducated, and the people that sailed from coast to coast tended to be educated men. They tended to be fairly wealthy men, but they tended to know a lot more about things than people in the Dark Ages did. And what they found was that they could very easily educate anybody that they visited, and all these people that they conscripted, basically stole a body and forced you to go to work on the boat. What they found was if you didn't educate people and kept them ignorant, a lot of people believed that the earth was flat, and that when you get out to open sea with a bunch of men who are literally dependent on you because they think the earth is flat and they have no idea where they are or what's going to happen to them if they jump ship or mutiny, they're not going to jump ship and they're not going to mutiny. And so as this idea of governance and of a few people protecting but also controlling and seizing the resources and the work produce of the population that they rule, sometimes it's just better for people in a rulership position. If you've ever read Machiavelli's The Prince, it's not a secret idea that people in charge generally understand that people are easier to govern when they aren't educated. So in the most general sense, I think that has quite a bit to do with this. Religion, if you've ever been to the Vatican, there is an accumulation of wealth in the Vatican that, completely aside from everything else, there's a massive financial vested interest in that organization maintaining its hold on the thinking of the world. So for commercial reasons, for theological conquest and domination reasons, there's a lot of overt things that would contribute to why we're not allowed to know. There's some things that I'm really, really interested in about why is this so taboo. And if you go back and actually read some of the writings from ancient Egypt or in the Gnostics, Hereward Tilton in the new show is a professor of Gnostic symbolism. They talk about some of this information not coming from people. So either whether it's aliens or in the Persian world, they have this whole thing about jinn, which we know as genies, like not the cute I Dream of Jeannie, Barbara Eden genie, but these malevolent, non-physical entities that you could call angels or you can call jinn, or some people have kind of equated aliens with these things. But there was a malevolent presence that was incredibly intelligent and didn't necessarily have our best interest in mind. Even in the Bible, the story of Satan wanting to give Eve information that would wake her up and make her equal to the gods, that thing is so ingrained in our culture. And by the way, it was a snake that gave this information to Eve, which when you start watching the Magical Egypt series, we start exploring these Kundalini themes and these tantric themes that involve the importance of the spine and the pineal gland. And then you go back and look at, you always find things that are associated. You don't just find the facts, but you find how to deal with them. Very much like television, by the way. Another reason why we're getting stupider and why TV is a cold medium is, have you ever noticed when you watch the news, they never just give you the facts. They tell you how to feel about those facts. And so if you're watching CNN, they tell you to feel one way. And if you're watching Fox, they tell you to feel another way. But it's incredibly insulting. And people should be incredibly insulted that they don't just give you the news. They give you the news and they have an opinion built into it. And so all of those things are diminishing our capacity to understand. And so in this primary core cultural myth that we have about the snake tempting Eve with information, the tree of knowledge of good and evil, there is something from the very beginnings of humanity, according to the Western mythos, that equates this forbidden knowledge with a forbidden source. And so I often find myself pushing up against this invisible membrane that says you can walk up to this point but no farther. And I wonder, like everyone else, why this taboo? And so when you start looking at these ancient cultures, there's a huge sentiment to the idea that there are these things. You contact them and you talk to them when you're on hallucinogenic drugs. It's what Jung and Swedenborg contacted in the hypnagogic state. There are these things that'll talk to you if you explore consciousness deep enough. So in this science that instead of looking outward looks inward, there are things like the moon and Jupiter and all of these uncharted territories in the psyche that aren't necessarily you, but they infringe on the periphery of your psyche, like an H.P. Lovecraft story or something. And that to me is extremely interesting, because that brings us to the whole subject of the occult and why through all of history the occult seems to be this thing that was born out of Egypt. And the occult, as you know, it's one of the most taboo things there is, but it's also one of the most interesting things there is. And so Jimmy Page, and Black Sabbath and all these people in the 70s that were the mechanism of transmission of the occult mysteries in those days, it's really why rock and roll became such an important part of our lives. And then why rock and roll was ultimately killed later when MTV, killed it in favor of the new kind of music that everyone listens to. That there's this, just forgive me for ranting, but all of these subjects are very close in my mind, that there's this message that keeps trying to come out. And there's a force that tries to prevent this message from coming out. And I'm not sure who the good guy is and who the bad guy is in this story. Maybe there's really good reasons for us not to know about this stuff, but I tend to fall on the side of, lots of people get in car wrecks, but it doesn't mean that nobody should be able to drive, that there's lots of dangerous information, but the demands of science, the demands of human evolution, the demands of the intellect is that there are no sacred spaces, and that it's the obligation of every intelligent person, no matter where the information came from, to at least explore it and subject it to the light of, rational inquiry, like Rene Descartes, the basic rules of science.
Right.
There's nothing that is off limits to science.
Well, and we today, I think collectively, are starting to realize that, starting to absolutely question everything and not believe everything that we're fed. But
yep.
When you hear over and over again things like, addressing the Great Pyramid, well, it was by chance that it's, to true north. It's by chance that it's level. It's by chance, well, there are 2.5 million stones in 20 years. Well, they just did it, and it just happened. You're not giving it, you hear this over and over again for the mathematics, these coincidences, that
the exact distance to the moon,
right? Our equator, all of it, man, all of it, and you hear it over and over again. Well, there are too many coincidences and too many chances here. There was something else going on, and now we want those answers.
A big part of episode 1 of the new series. Talk about John West and Robert Schoch and Robert Bauval and Robert Lawler and this kind of first generation of people as a counterculture, a new counterculture, or maybe an extension of the counterculture of the 60s, because it all kind of revolved around the same things. But when you have a child and that child is 9 or 10, it's not appropriate for that child to look at pornography. But there comes a certain time when all of a sudden you'll find the parental regulations start easing up. And, unless you're some kind of psycho, nobody takes their child to a whorehouse when they turn 14 anymore. It exists in urban legend. But what you find is just that people start backing away from the restrictions on knowledge. And it's necessary when you go from prepubescence to postpubescence that all of a sudden your attention is going to be directed to the next phase of your growth, which involves sexuality and stuff. So I'm seeing that old taboo starting to give way. And it's why people like yourself, people with intelligent, curious, keen minds and a good sense of observation and a knowledge of a diversity of different cultural fields will inevitably find this stuff and say, in a certain sense, this is the only thing that matters, just like your first porno magazine or just your first exposure to a sexual situation outside of adult supervision is the most fascinating thing in the world, that this is everywhere where we want to be. And this is the nature of our new phase of growth. And so whatever the reason why we weren't supposed to do this, it's very much like Cinderella and her wicked stepsisters and her evil stepmother, that those artificial forces that have been keeping us from our destiny, and finding out about this information, which is really finding out about ourselves. I think most people will find, when we did Coast to Coast a while back, a couple people called and said, aren't you scared giving away secrets like this? I don't think that these things are secret anymore. I think just like that metaphor of fleas in a jar, if you keep a lid on a jar of fleas for long enough, then you take the jar off, nobody will ever jump past where the lid was because we've all learned not to go there. And sooner or later, when you take the jar off of fleas, one or two impetuous troublemaker fleas are going to notice, hey, there's no lid on the jar anymore. And they'll tell everybody else. And then very quickly, the jar's empty. And I'm kind of seeing your role in the world and my role in the world is alerting people to the fact that, guess what? You're past puberty now. It's time for us to collectively look at this information that's been so forbidden and recognize it for how important it is, that it's really our next stage of development.
Do you think, we've got about 3 minutes before the break, do you think that there is a chance of something accidental outside of Egyptology, or the control of Egypt and Cairo and so forth, that would blow all of this wide open? A tourist walking through the desert falls into a hole and boom, there is the Library of Alexandria's hidden wealth, something like that.
I would sure hope that happens. And those things do happen. That's how they found the Nag Hammadi library and all of the original Bibles that caused so much trouble. It was literally some sheep herder in a cave that found this stuff. There's always that possibility. I'm hoping Magical Egypt is one of those forces because nobody's ever looked at the art in this way that makes it so clear what this message is. And there's just no way to refute. You can't refute a mathematical formula. And when you look at the new Magical Egypt and look at these specific ways that this message was encrypted into the art, it removes the ability to argue with it. And then the question remains now, what do we do with this information?
Let's take a break right here, and we'll pick all of this up when we come back. Our guest tonight, Chance Gardner, director of Magical Egypt and Magical Egypt 2. Episode 5 is now, it's going to be out by the end of the week. But use the promo code Fade to Black and go and watch all of them. There's so much stuff on magicalegypt.com. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. I'll be right back with our guest, Chance Gardner. Stay with us.
You are listening to my boy, Jimmy Church, on jimmychurchradio.com.
Despite popular opinion, reading a book will not make you smarter.
But listening to Jimmy Church will.
So you went to dinner last night, you had your favorite pasta. Ugh. Or maybe you had a heavy, spicy meal and it left you. Ugh. GetTheTea.com. Maybe you mowed down a huge steak and your plumbing is all plugged. Ugh. GetTheTea.com. Our super strength tea will take care of your occasional. Ugh. It's all organic and non-GMO. Get rid of ugh. We have so many great supplements, but our super tea is number one. GetTheTea.com. That's GetTheTea.com.
So, you love talk radio? Then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live is always on, 24/7 with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on mobile with any smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com. Be sure to download the free apps from Google Play or the iTunes App Store.
When you take the beans from Central America with dashes of Indonesian and African mixed in and then roast it to the dark side of Fade to Black, you create the ultimate brew of fringe. Introducing the Fade to Black blend from Rivermoon Coffee. Yes, Rivermoon's darkest customized roast was created for the love of Fade to Black. The alchemy of masterful roasting and smoking the beans is in every sip of this full-bodied, dark Java. I need my coffee dark, deep, with distinct bittersweet chocolate highlights, just like the bunker. Leaning further into the darkness of the roast is Fade to Black blend from Rivermoon Coffee. Just click on the banner at jimmychurchradio.com and use the promo code F2BBLEND for 15% off of your order today. Go Beckley Teppy.
Hey, can we talk about something serious for a minute? Your age. Getting old has its perks. But remember, being a few years younger, you know, your hair was thicker, you didn't have so many wrinkles, that extra weight wasn't haunting you, and you just felt better. Well, we can't turn back the clocks and go back 10 or 15 years, but you can start feeling and looking 10 or 15 years younger with Nature's Youth RSF. It's a doctor-formulated daily supplement that helps your body maintain its peak performance and fight the aging process. Imagine sleeping better, looking better, and feeling better. See how Nature's Youth RSF has helped thousands of people just like you at nature'syouth.com. nature'syouth.com. The holidays are coming. Imagine how it will feel when your family and friends are asking you what you did to look so good. Your secret will be Nature's Youth RSF. It's time to start looking better and feeling better. Learn more and order your Nature's Youth RSF at nature'syouth.com. That's nature'syouth.com.
It's not a lifestyle we chose. We were born this way. KGRAradio.com.
This is KJCR at JimmyChurchRadio.com.
Welcome back. Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Our guest tonight, Chance Gardner. This segment of Fade to Black is proudly brought to you by New Manna. Emergency food storage for you and your family. 25-year shelf life. MSG, GMO-free, made in America. Every order over $100 gets you an autographed Fade to Black t-shirt. Use the promo code Jimmy. Go over to our landing page right now at jimmychurchradio.com. Now, Chance, now I'm going to ask you some of the million-dollar questions. Let's right. Go here to a zone where we have never gone before.
Uh-oh.
All right. What was your, and keep these answers short, okay? The first time you went up to a slab of red granite and slapped it with your hand, what went through your mind?
For me, it was the face. It wasn't just walls or sculpture, columns, but there was a group of statues. I walked in and immediately I was uncomfortable because there was this presence in the room and I wasn't really thinking about it, and I might have been a little hungover, a little rough in the morning. It was an Abu symbol. And I walked in and I'm just aware of these four people glaring at me, and they were kind of yelling in that way, but they weren't saying anything. And I'm there for a minute and I didn't want to look at them. I'm messing with my camera and I look up and I realize that these are statues. And they had a presence about them, and they had this intelligence. And then later I found out that there was quite a lot of writing in ancient Egypt about how you actually trap souls or entomb souls in statues, that those statues weren't just rock, but they had these incredible magical processes done to them to, in essence, trap a soul in the statue. And the same with temples and stuff. So when you're there in person, there's something that no photograph can convey, that these things have a presence and a personality, and not necessarily a happy, friendly personality.
Okay. And what about the density? It's so dense. You know what I mean? It is just like, it's so final. You go up. I went up to this red granite sarcophagus, and massive, right? And I just went up, and it's 2 feet thick, the walls of it. And you go up and you feel it's cold, and you feel it, and you knock on it, and you realize that this is like the densest thing on the planet.
Yeah.
Like a
and you
diamond.
know what else? They're polarized in this way that nobody understands. So there's some obelisks that have fallen over, and if you hit them, they literally ring like a bell.
They ring like a bell.
Rings.
Yeah, they ring like a bell. I've heard the recordings. I've watched people do it. And it's like, wait a minute here. Now,
and ordinary stone doesn't do that, by the way. There's a specific pattern. Somehow, nobody knows how they did it, but there is an alignment, a polarization of the actual molecules of the stone. And so it's alive. It's a musical instrument, or has a vibration.
Now let's go to question number 2. With what you know now about granite and its properties and how hard it is, because it's hard. When you look at these beautiful inscriptions that are carved into it, and some of them are literally 4,500 years old and older.
Yep. How
did they get it done? Because copper tools don't apply. Chicken bones certainly don't work. How did they carve it?
Chicken bones have a limited functionality as tools. It's well observed. There are evidences all over the place that they could produce a type of heat that we don't understand. In the statues in Cairo Museum, there's obsidian and these stones that are impossible to cut under any circumstances because they're so fine and they flake. But it appears as though there was the technology to literally melt the stone and pour it into molds to get the perfect finishes that they had. What's the question? Ask me the question again.
How did they carve into?
Electrum. There's this thing called electrum. That's a amalgam of silver and gold, I think. But it has this very particular electrical conductive property. It requires so much heat. We've only been able to make electrum, fairly recently in history. But there's evidence that the top of the obelisks were done in electrum. And so, we see those pictures of the light bulb, which has, it's a kind of controversial thing, but there appears to be sources of energy that they had back then that were able to produce incredible amounts of heat that we don't really understand. The closest we've come is the Baghdad battery, but that produces a very mild electrical thing. But there was part of Magical Egypt is this exploration of an unacknowledged science that we just cannot explain.
When I went up, I've seen a few sarcophagi, and I go up, and it's one thing to look at the size of it. It's massive, it's square, it's perfect, and then you look inside and you see the hieroglyphics, and they're perfect. They're perfect. Yeah. And you have to step back and ask yourself, now, how did they do that? How did they do that? I don't want to hear simple stuff. Well, they just got it done. That doesn't work for me. And my eyes are what I believe. My eyes are what I trust. And I'm blown away by that. Red granite, all granite is not a joke. This is not something that just needs to be dismissed. And so we have that aspect. Now let's back up a step. You still have to quarry this. You have to cut it out of the quarry, and you have to make it square, and you have to move it. And the weight of things today, the most modern crane out there, the most biggest crane, 10 tons, 15 tons, and they can get it about 100 meters in the air and about 50 meters out, right? 150 feet up and another, you know what I mean? And so we look at it in those aspects. How were they quarrying this before they ever got a chance to carve hieroglyphics into it? I can't get my head around it.
It works on so many levels, but just the thing about Egypt that is amazing all by itself is the brute force of the accomplishment. That the size of the stones before they're quarried, before they're carved down into statues, before anything else happens, the size of the stones. If there were nothing else but that would still be the most amazing thing in the world.
My point.
And
That's
in
my
Baalbek,
point.
In Samaria and in Babylon, there are stones that are even bigger than in Egypt and seem to go back farther. So that is a huge one. Just everything else aside, how did they move those stones around? Clearly, we're dealing with something that is a technology that we have yet to get back to ourselves.
Well, what's your okay? Before you answer me so simply, how do you think that they pulled it off? And you have to go when you go to Aswan. And you look at the unfinished obelisk there, right? 150 feet. 150 feet, perfect. Man, it's ready to go. It cracked and they didn't finish it. But there it is sitting there in the quarry. Now, let's say they did finish it. How are they going to move that?
I'll answer you in kind of a roundabout way because it tends to get pretty weird. But when you join the Rosicrucians, I'm not a official Rosicrucian member, but my friend Lon joined the Rosicrucians. When you start, you get these seriagraphs, and you start in this way that you start in the gym with these little tiny weights. There are exercises in the early phases of Rosicrucianism and in a lot of other esoteric communities where you start actually experimenting with moving things with your mind. I know that's a hugely ridiculed subject, but later on there was this character, Ed Leeds Scalnan, who made this amazing park out of stone. He was a weird savant himself, Coral Castle it's called. He never let anybody help him move the stones. He never had cranes. He never had anything else. The only thing he was ever photographed to have was he had a radio for some reason, an old cheap radio, and a bunch of copper wires, and something to do with water and magnetics. And he would never let anybody see him do it. But somehow him all by himself without the aid of machinery were able to lift these incredibly large stones. In a lot of really ancient occult literature, and not just in Egypt, but in a lot of places in the East and in the Persian cultures, your third eye allows you to have this relationship with material. And I know this sounds absolutely insane. I'm just talking about this as one of the possible ideas, but there's quite a body of information about this. You learn to lift things with your mind. The ultimate test of certain types of accomplishment in the occult circles is the ability to interact with material matter with your mind. And so there's some really interesting legends about people who were able to lift these giant stones, not using external technology, but just using something to do with the way our mind interacts. The other idea that's out there that's really interesting is if you know a little bit about sound waves, Venice and I, in fact, went to that college in Pasadena where
Caltech.
Albert Einstein used to work. Yeah, Caltech. And we visited a guy there named John Lee. We visited him for a completely other reason, but it turned out his day job is to make things levitate. He levitated a spider for us when we were there, and the spider hated it. The spider did not enjoy it. But anyway, 3 octaves of sound cancel out gravity. So you can use sound waves to cancel out gravity. Also, the Germans taught us that 2 counter-rotating magnets, 2 circular magnets, when you put them next to each other and counter-rotate them, causes things to lift. So there are natural ways, if you're smart enough, and if you interact with nature enough, and if you understand things like magnetism and properties of water and thermodynamics and stuff, there are several people who've proven throughout history that there's ways to lift stones that don't involve cranes.
Okay, then are you proposing that to go from Aswan 500 miles up to the Giza Plateau, they just floated them? Wait.
I did an animation. I literally did an animation of that exact thing, and I cannot say whether it's absolutely true or not. But that to me seems like one of the, as bizarre as it is.
It's not bizarre. It's not bizarre. I can tell you how they didn't do it. They didn't drag them across the desert. That did not happen. I did the math once. Okay, so you got 500 miles, and you've got a 70-ton stone, like red granite, like that's above the relieving chambers, or in the relieving chambers above the king's chamber, right? Okay, so 70 tons moving 1 foot I've got to go back and look at my exact calculations, but let's say 1 foot per hour. Do you know how long it takes to go from Aswan to Giza, one stone?
Absolutely right. Literally not possible.
No. Do you know how much time that is?
No.
Well, it's not 20 years. I can tell you that.
No. Whoever came with that 20-year idea, I think it might have been Zahi. Clearly not. I mean, just not the case. Obvious obfuscation of the facts.
None of the math works, right? None of the math works, no matter how you try to figure it. And the reason why the 20 years doesn't work, for the obvious stuff, 2.5 million stones coming from the limestone quarry across the Nile, right? Put on boats. The boats would have sunk, by the way. And across the Nile, if you go look at Khufu's boat, right? This magnificent, and it's gorgeous, right? It's gorgeous. Put a 70-ton limestone block in that and watch how long it floats.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. And the current, they didn't have boat motors, allegedly. So how are they fighting the current to get these 70-ton blocks up the river? Number one, well, it'd be down the river with the current, but across the river from the limestone quarry. Watch the boats today.
There wouldn't even be enough room on the boat for all the people you'd need to paddle it.
Think about all of these aspects of it. So anyway, going back, and this whole thing, well, they would have to place a stone every 2.5 minutes, right? To fit it into this 20-year timetable. Go over and watch them mine rocks today in the modern aspect. Okay, it takes them so long. Forget the 2.5 minutes. So if you look at what it takes to mine one block, you're now looking at 200, 250, 300 years to mine 2.5 million stones. So don't hit me. And that's just that aspect of it. Forget about everything else, the leveling of the foundation, the red granite, feeding everybody. Now, and there's one other aspect. I want you to address this. We have let's go basic. We have 5 fairly large pyramids that were allegedly built in the 75 years before the Great Pyramid, right? And you can stretch it out. Let's say it was 150 years. The amount of people that it took to make the Bent Pyramid, the Red Pyramid, and so for the step to build all of those, you have the same amount of people involved with that. The same amount of people, right? Yep. So you were able to go and build each one of these projects, and then at the very end, slap the Great Pyramid together like it was nothing. And the math doesn't work. It simply doesn't work. There's no way that anybody can convince me that it was done the way that they have proposed.
There's a lot of new things about how it appears that the pyramid was underwater for a long, long time, too. And it may have been there before our idea of what an Egyptian is even existed. That it's this enigma that comes from so far back that we don't even know if it was humans that built it.
Yeah, you can see that erosion. When you're standing next to the Great Pyramid, it's like a quarter of the way up, you can see where it was underwater. I mean, you can see it with your eye, can't you?
Yeah, there's some shells and all kinds of stuff all over it if you're actually looking at it that clearly it was underwater for a long time.
And so what does that tell you? Are we going back?
It came from someplace so long ago that there might not have been people around when it was there. And we've talked about this before. When you're in the pyramid was not built to be friendly to human architecture. If you swiveled at the hip like you were a velociraptor, the pyramid would suddenly make sense from an architectural standpoint, because things that walk like kangaroos or velociraptors or things like that are perfect and comfortable in there. I'm not saying that I think that dinosaurs built the pyramids, but clearly, well, it appears as though that thing had it wasn't a tomb for the king, as I think everyone agrees, but it served some purpose, and it took so much trouble to put the thing there, and it's been there for so long that it might turn out we'll never know. But the only thing that we seem to be able to know and state pretty conclusively is that the things we were taught in school about it aren't true, just simply aren't true. And it's, we all know people who are pedantic and would rather make something up than admit that they have no idea. And it seems like the humanity, not the science, but the humanity of Egyptology might in some cases be offering just some explanation in lieu of no explanation.
Now, we're talking about Giza, but there are other pyramids around the world, certainly all of the Mayan stuff, everything that is in Mexico, China, where these megalithic monuments have all survived time when everything else around it has crumbled. Earthquakes, age, overtaken by forest or whatever it may be, pollution. But the pyramid structure and the megalithic structure and those basic designs are all still standing. Now, I don't want to say that crazy word coincidence, but there's something going on here.
You know how they say hunger is the best sauce? Beauty is this weird strategy for creating something that's going to be timeless. That there's this actual physical thing that is it's strange, and it's going to seem like a tangent, but it's not. That if you know about tuning your guitar, we tuned to 440 in middle C, and that's a very modern thing. Before World War II, the Vienna Accord was that everyone in the world all tuned their instruments to 432 hertz, which happens to be the background hum of the universe. And it's a whole other conversation why we moved it away from that. But if you tune your guitar to 432, it actually stays in tune longer. The guitar itself, for some reason nobody understands, the guitar stays in tune. The effect of the wood is sweeter. And so Plato and Pythagoras and several other people that were trying to get their minds wrapped around Egypt and in the East, those beautiful Taoist temples and the beautiful tantric yogic temples. Every famous artist has always said some version of what really makes art timeless is beauty, that whether it's just the psychological impact of I don't want to destroy this thing because it's so beautiful, or whether creating something that is visually and vibrationally in tune with the world around it just causes a structural integrity. And so you're right, a lot of these things, there was a building in Hiroshima or Nagasaki, one of those two, this beautiful temple that was the only thing left standing after an atom bomb went off. It's an iconic picture of this Shinto shrine that didn't fall over. So there's, again, something to do with field, it's largely psychological, but it might turn out that beauty is itself a kind of magic that we don't understand. So everybody who's written a good song or done a good sculpture, there's a timelessness that comes from infusing beauty into a thing. And if these people did understand that there would come times in the future where people would degenerate into a sort of monkey consciousness, what are the materials? What is the geometry? What is the aesthetic framework that is going to immortalize this information? And these things that are the most beautiful, for some reason, seem to be the most full of longevity because everyone respects it. There's, certain religious blips in history that have been hell-bent on destroying the beauty of the past. But that notwithstanding, if you don't have an actual malicious force, making something beautiful is a fantastic way to make it last.
Do you have contacts over in Cairo and Giza?
Sure. I have a whole separate, not an actual second family like baseball players have, but I have I have a extended family there. John's whole apparatus, Muhammad at Quest Travel and Zuhaila is this just iconic personality over there. The people that were the infrastructure of John's tours, Zuhaila, they know who they are. Nobody else will if I say their names, but anyway, I'm very close to them. And because of what I've been doing, I've got such an amazing group of people in this new, in the new project that all the time somebody affiliated with Magical Egypt is over there. we're going over with Robert Schock, and we're going to start doing tours ourselves over there at some point starting this year. So we do have an active kind of family that extends over to that place. And I find it one of the most interesting places in the world for obvious reasons.
Well, what are they saying about the new chamber above the Grand Gallery that was discovered? There's a couple of rumors going around that they retrieved artifacts from there and that they're going to be on display at the Cairo Museum when it opens up later this year. Have you heard anything about that?
Wow, I have not. I'd be most surprised if they displayed anything. From everything I can tell, that superstructure that's there is there to keep us from finding something out about the pyramid. So I'd be extremely surprised if they found something. Of course they're going to find something, but how they manage breaking it to the public I would be very surprised if they were just open and honest about it. I'd say that they would get in there themselves and prevent us from learning like they have done for my whole lifetime and your whole lifetime.
Well, what are your contacts telling you? Is there any evidence that they're trying to, or have tried to get into it? Have they, closed down the Great Pyramid and, put up some caution tape, some crime screen?
Well, if you watch
scene tape?
The rollout of this whole thing, there's a Muon group. There's this group from I think Japan that has put a bunch of photosensitive plates in the pyramid, and there's these cosmic particles, muons, that pass through everything, but you can tell from the path of them, sort of like taking a sonogram of a pregnant woman, you can tell where the crevices are in the pyramids and stuff, and they seem to have found something. And the minute, well, first of all, there was organized resistance to letting them do it in the first place, but they somehow wound their way around that. They got to do it, and then instantly Zahi Hawass started holding press releases where he announced that we're not going to take anything seriously from this finding, and essentially he said we already know there's nothing there, so no matter what these people find, there's going to be nothing there, and that he somehow placed himself at the very pinnacle of the decision-making process about whether to go forward and how to present it. So his whole contribution was, whatever's there, we need to have a special council drawn up, and we need to talk about it for several years before we decide whether there's anything there. So in his kind of oversimplistic way, he was already admitting he's there specifically to prevent any information from coming out about this thing. And it sounds like kind of a paranoid take on this, but if you look back over the years at the role that this particular guy has played, he seems more like a guard dog than somebody who's there to usher out new findings about the pyramids.
Why would he? Is it because he can't get away? And why is he injecting himself into the narrative? Because he's not part of it.
This is a strange thing, and I'll preface this by saying that this is like, I wasn't present for any of this to have happened, but if you go back and actually look at him, this strange thing that no one talks about, the Edgar Cayce Foundation. I know you're friends with David Wilcock, who has some connection to Edgar Cayce. Anyway, Edgar Cayce was a psychic at the turn of the century who somehow ended up with a lot of money, and there was a funding body that would send promising people to this Edgar Cayce Foundation, where you learn esotericism and the history of the cult and whatnot. And it turns out Zahi Hawass was funded to go through the Edgar Cayce Foundation before he got into place there. So whether he did that thing that the terrorists were rumored to have done, where they take flying classes so they could fly airplanes into the World Trade Center, unless he was there intentionally as a double agent, it might turn out that esoteric societies from around the world and of all of time know that there's something there, but that the whole process of initiation and the whole process of joining an esoteric or fraternal organization, you have to grow to a certain point before you can handle the truth of whatever's there. I know that sounds like a weird cliche or something Jack Nicholson would say, but since you're asking me, and I don't have any concrete evidence of any of this, but it is odd that the people that are most centrally situated in occult circles are the people, and by the way, these are the English Egyptologists who discovered this, Arthur Edward Waite, and a lot of the people from the Golden Dawn. There was a big overlap between the esoteric and occult communities in England and the people that were over there studying the pyramids and telling the rest of the world about them. And there's always been this thing at the center of the occult and of the occult community, that there are some things that just aren't appropriate for the world in general to know until you've done this certain preparation in yourself. And there seems to be something wrapped up in the figure of Zahi Hawass, that he comes from this place that recognizes these occult traditions. And yet outwardly, he's the man who's the very first to show up with a fire hose and put out your fire if you start trying to draw the world's attention to something anomalous. So this goes back to that idea of prepubescent and post-pubescent cultures. And there seems to be some things that have to do with the occult that the public is not allowed to know. Just like Robert Temple got contacted by the government at a certain point when he started writing about Sirius, the star, and about how the Eye of Providence in the Masonry deals with this idea that some of our culture might have come from Sirius. That there's these ideas that all sound crazy when you hear them for the first time, but when you look at how smart and how educated the people are that champion this, or how these are the central secrets of some of the biggest fraternal organizations in the world, there's clearly something there that's not for public attention, or at least wasn't at times past. And that's part of the reason why it's created such a massive curiosity for the world, that there's something here that we all know is there. It's like a dog that smells a steak, in another room. I know there's something there and I'm being drawn to it, but there's a door in the way and I keep knocking at that door, but there's somebody on the other side of the door that doesn't want me to know what's there.
Chance Gardner, thank you for this conversation. Now, you said that it'll be this Friday, episode 5 will be released?
Available to the world, great and small alike, statesmen and peasants alike can watch the new episode 5. It's been a long time in production, and it is by far our most controversial and taboo subject. I'm waiting now for people to break in my door because of some of the taboo subjects we cross.
MagicalEgypt.com, and use the promo code FADE2BLACK. You'll get your discount, and episode 5 is coming out. And again, so well done. Thank you for everything that you do. And give my best to Venice, will you?
Will do. She's right here. Jimmy sends his best. Jimmy, you are the king. You are the king. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Chance. Behave and be well. That's all you need to do.
If you say so.
Till next time.
See ya.
Chance Gardner, everybody. MagicalEgypt.com. MagicalEgypt.com. I just actually clicked on the wrong commercial. MagicalEgypt.com, and promo code is F2 black, or FADE2BLACK. FADE2 black, one word. All right, I'm going to open up the phone lines. Let's do this. Monday night on Fade to Black, open lines are next. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Follow me on Twitter at JChurchRadio. I'll be right back.
You are listening to my boy, Jimmy Church, on JimmyChurchRadio.com.
Despite popular opinion, reading a book will not make you smarter.
But listening to Jimmy Church will.
So you went to dinner last night, you had your favorite pasta. Ugh. Or maybe you had a heavy, spicy meal and it left you. Ugh. Get the T.com. Maybe you mowed down a huge steak and your plumbing is all plugged. Ugh. Get the T.com. Our super strength tea will take care of your occasional. Ugh. It's all organic and non-GMO. Get rid of. Ugh. We have so many great supplements, but our super tea is number one. Get the T.com. That's GetTheT.com.
So, you love talk radio? Then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live is always on, 24/7, with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on mobile with any smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com. Be sure to download the free apps from Google Play or the iTunes App Store.
When you take the beans from Central America with dashes of Indonesian and African mixed in and then roasted to the dark side of Fade to Black, you create the ultimate brew of fringe. Introducing the Fade to Black blend from River Moon Coffee.
Yes, River Moon's darkest customized roast was created for the love of Fade to Black. The alchemy of masterful roasting and smoking the beans is in every sip of this full-bodied dark Java. I need my coffee dark, deep, with distinct bittersweet chocolate highlights, just like the bunker. Leaning further into the darkness of the roast is Fade to Black Blend from River Moon Coffee. Just click on the banner at jimmychurchradio.com and use the promo code F2BBLEND for 15% off of your order today. Go Beckley Teppy.
Hey, can we talk about something serious for a minute? Your age. Getting old has its perks. But remember, being a few years younger, you know, your hair was thicker, you didn't have so many wrinkles, that extra weight wasn't haunting you, and you just felt better. Well, we can't turn back the clocks and go back 10 or 15 years, but you can start feeling and looking 10 or 15 years younger with Nature's Youth RSF. It's a doctor-formulated daily supplement that helps your body maintain its peak performance and fight the aging process. Imagine sleeping better, looking better, and feeling better. See how Nature's Youth RSF has helped thousands of people just like you at naturesyouth.com. naturesyouth.com. The holidays are coming. Imagine how it will feel when your family and friends are asking you what you did to look so good. Your secret will be Nature's Youth RSF. It's time to start looking better and feeling better. Learn more and order your Nature's Youth RSF at naturesyouth.com. That's naturesyouth.com.
It's not a lifestyle we chose. We were born this way. KGRARadio.com.
This is KJCR at jimmychurchradio.com.
Welcome back, Fade to Black. Romeo Jimmy Church, thank you, Chance Gardner. Magical Egypt and Magical Egypt 2, magicalegypt.com. I was privileged and honored to check out episode 5 today, and it's the visuals, the audio and the data and the knowledge is going to happen anyway, right? You can close your eyes and listen to that and absorb it. But you start watching this, and it is unbelievable. Episode 5, like Chance said, will be out this Friday. Okay, so you got a few short days. Use the promo code FADE2BLACK, the number 2, no spaces. All right. Going back and forth with George Norrie via email on how to plug in your headphones at the studio. I wish you guys could read this exchange. It's absolutely brilliant. All right, I've opened up the phone lines, 323-825-5045 or 323-275-9695. Let's go to the phones. Hi, you're live on Fade to Black. Who's calling? You're live. 3, 2, 1. Okay, let's go to the next call. Hi, you're live on Fade to Black. Who's calling?
This is Paris again, Jimmy.
This is who? Paris?
Terrence with a T. Sorry, I'm eating. I got to, I hear you.
Okay, you can't eat. Okay, well, finish eating. So what's on your mind?
No, I'm through eating now.
Okay, turn me down in the background. All right, so what's on your mind tonight, Terrace?
Oh, nothing. Just calling again, man. This is the guy from Chicago.
How are you?
I'm all right.
Okay, what's on your mind, man?
Hold on, I'm trying to cut this down, Jimmy. My bad. Hold on. Just give me 1 second.
Okay, why don't you give me a call back?
I got it down.
Okay, what's on your mind?
Nothing. I was calling to say about they done finally let the cat out the bag, disclose it.
Say that again?
I said they finally let the cat out the bag. The government admitted to UFOs and stuff. That's what I was calling.
Well, let's hope that they do, and let's hope that, and I really do, that it continues, whatever it is. I said this the other night, and I really mean it. That right now, before we go and trust what the man is saying, we need a little more track record here, because we've been lied to for so long, and suddenly everything has changed. Well, I'm going to wade into the water. I'm not going to jump in.
Right. Right.
So
the same thing. I was shocked though in December when they came on out and said it though.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Terrace. I think we all were shocked, but you know what? We're not going to know after some more time goes on and gets behind us. Are we going to understand and really know what happened back in December? We'll find out. And you know what? It just needs to play out. And it could be the greatest thing ever, but we've got to let some more time pass. I'm not, right now. When has the Pentagon ever been our friend? When?
Never.
When? So all of a sudden now we're supposed to go, okay, it's all cool, man. We'll forget about the past. Right now we believe everything that you are doing, and it's all in our best interest. I'm not going to roll like that. I'm not going to roll into it like that. I've got my blinders on. I'm going to step back and wait. And just like anything else, you need to, you get a new job, you go through a 3-month probationary period, right? Same thing here. They're on probation. We'll see what happens. Thank you, Terrace, and behave and be well, man.
Okay.
Thank you. Let's go to the next call. Hi, you're live on Fade to Black. Who's calling?
Hi. This is Phil.
Hi, Phil. How are you?
I am doing fine. I'm trying to get turned off here, man.
Okay, yeah, Phil, you gotta call ready, man. Okay, so what's on?
I'm sorry, man.
That's okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to say I kind of agree. You can't trust the government to do anything for us. It doesn't seem like now it's gone batshit crazy. So, but this was a great talk. I really liked this magical Egypt. I've been studying Egypt for a long time. Big fan of sauce.
Absolutely, and you need to go use that promo code, Phil. And go check out Magical Egypt, and then call me back on Fader Night. Let me know what you think. But it's amazing. Thank you for thank you.
I think I can afford it, probably.
Oh, of course you can. You got that. You got that Fade to Black discount.
Okay, man. Yes. Just one thing, man. I've been doing some meditations, and I've been using a mantra, and I would really like to share it with everybody. And it's just using the phrase peace, love, and whatever, like harmony, abundance, and just focus on that for, your breath for, however long you can, 10, 15 minutes.
You know what?
I think it would really help.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. We'll get that up there in Twitter. Thank you so much, Phil. What is everybody else's favorite mantra? Do you have one that you use when you meditate? I would like to know. You can go ahead and post it right up there on Twitter. Hi, you're live on Fade to Black. Who's calling?
Jimmy, what's up, man? It's Ed.
Hey, Ed. How are you?
Oh, good. Okay, I'm going to try to pull together, and I'll be quick. First off, you are the man. I've been listening to you for a few years now, and kind of, exploring on this whole thing. And you won me over. It's kind of like I listen to you, and then I'd find myself listening more and more. Then I'm like, this guy's my boy. And so I grew up with, kind of a gifted older brother who was reading newspapers. He wanted to read, I wanted to wrestle. But the one thing I got out of it was, the Loch Ness Monster and UFOs. And that's, so I went on and I'm a football player and did all that kind of stuff. But I wanted to tell you, after listening for years, about finally I had a sighting, and not just any sighting. This is broad daylight at a football camp at 10:30 in the morning in Aurora, Ontario. And it's over the tree line, and we're on the grass of a baseball field. And all the kids are kind of, I just finished the stretch with them, and it's broad daylight, 60-odd kids with trainers, all the coaches, everybody. And one kid, I hear the voice go, "What the heck is that?" And they're kind of in a big semicircle, covering the grass on their knees. So I paid attention. What the heck was that? I heard the voice, and it was just, I don't know, it was real. I look up, and there's a tree line that is kind of, once the tree line stops, it goes into the baseball field. But so over top of the horizon of it was, I swear to God, Jimmy, and I have two pictures, but I'm going to talk to you about that in a sec, of it was like a 200-foot pool noodle. Okay? Right there. Charcoal, sometimes a glimmer, and it was just sitting there. There's no wind. It moved independently. Then it would be it was there for 30 minutes. It would be so far away, way off in the distance, and it would be so, then all of a sudden be hidden in some clouds, but it was like a nice blue day with a blue sky with just a few clouds. But either way, when it was there, it'd be a little hard to see. Oh, where's it? Oh, it's over there. Boom, it would come back. And I always say to my buddies, because we always laugh. I'm like, they know I'm this UFO geek, and it's hilarious. And I go, I get it. Either way, we're all going to work on Monday morning. You know what I mean? So as much as you got to want to go on it, it's like the guys who aren't obsessed about it, so what? But I finally got a damn sighting, man. And Jimmy was so damn cool. And it was in front of the ultimate, what you want it to be. Now, you said one time, and I'm sorry for going on. You said one time about you sit there and what the hell did happen? Why didn't you take your phone out? Now, I did way after, and I got two pictures of it up in the sky. I could have had a video of it right in front of me. And it took me that long. And I'm not a man who doesn't react when reaction's needed.
Right.
And I didn't do it. Was out of control, but everybody saw it. And wild. Absolutely wild.
How long did the entire sighting last?
I would say 30 minutes, an hour maybe. The bright blue sky, because we'd have an AM, PM practice. There's luncheon. It's a football camp for kids called Super Elite Football Camp. And, there's a morning practice. Then the kids would have some lunch and under the shelter of where the whole grounds are. And, this thing was there for the whole morning. Now, the guy, my boy who runs it, and he has, social media people and the whole bit. Well, this guy, I was like, we're sitting there. There's that damn UFO, this guy, and he's like in charge of 200 children, like I'm 13 to like 8.
Mm-hmm.
So like he's got parents on his mind. He got like, is there peanut butter where someone's gonna be allergic? And
right.
And so this man did not want to hear. And I was grabbing by his beard, and I was like, man, look up, man, what's going on here? It was out of control, but I'm sure one of his people must have it on. And I have two on my phone. But the kind of point is about that, just like you say, when you see it, you know it, The point is, I got to see this giant, cigar-shaped, the exact same one. I think there's one in, it's Turkey, because I went in that day. I think it was July 11th or June 11th, because when I went home, I YouTubes, and there was a sighting in St. Catharines, Ontario. These couple is in the car because I want to see if anybody else saw it, right? And so it's St. Catharines, Ontario, which is not where I was. Maybe that would be like a couple hours, an hour and a half, maybe west from where I was, 2 hours west, an hour and a half west. And there was a box in the sky that this couple was filming through their car windshield. I have no idea if that was Jimmy. It looked like a good one to me, and I'm not trying to fall for anything. My point is, this what?
Yeah, go ahead.
Are you kidding me? You go, bro. Are you nuts, man?
I mean, I say this so often because when it happens, there's your life before, and then there's your life immediately after. It can be, and it was from a true life-changing event. And that is what's most amazing about it, because before you have questions, after you may have more questions, but at least that one is answered, right?
Well, I'm with you, man. But you know what's hilarious is that, it was the ultimate. Like, I even get the humor into myself going, all right, like, I finally I've admitted to everybody, look, guys, like, we're all fucking hammered. Oh, excuse me, Jimmy, I'm sorry. When we're all hammered, I'm so sorry, we're all having fun, and I like this whole UFO thing, and etc. So the fact that all of a sudden, hey, years later, hey, guys, I saw one. Like, come on, man, And but at the same time, it was just, holy cow, it couldn't have been any better. I guess a disc would have been a better, shape and, viewing or whatever. But a 200-foot charcoal pool noodle, like, bent and moving independently and shining and rotating, and out there for, an hour, 30 minutes, 45 minutes. It was, and the kids, like 65 people, and this whole football camp, it was out of control.
Yeah, what was the date? When did this happen?
Like I said, I think the 11th is running in my head here. And only because of the hour is why I can't just spit it out. I hope you understand that, right? And so, like I'm saying, July 11th, and again, it was a super elite football camp, summer camp in Aurora. And so,
Aurora,
July
Colorado.
11th.
Okay, Aurora, Colorado.
Aurora, Ontario. Sorry, Jimmy, man.
Aurora, Ontario, and
yes, sir.
And this is July 11th, 2017.
You got it.
Okay, well, I want everybody up in Canada that was around that area to let me know if you saw anything in the sky, and if you got any images of it. I would love to hear from you. So,
that's awesome.
I really appreciate it. Thank you for the phone call.
Jimmy, I know this is probably the last time in my life that I'll do it because I'm not this kind of guy. Can I tell one more quick one? It's so quick.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. I don't mean it, Jimmy. Thank you. So I'm driving home. This is going again in Ontario, and I'm driving up to Guelph, Ontario from kind of Burlington, Ontario, kind of Hamilton, Ontario area. So it's a 35-minute drive up a 2-lane highway, come down, something that's a little bit, whatever. Anyway, it's like 3 or 4 in the morning. It's pitch black. It's just one of those mornings, midnight, And I see this all of a sudden in the dark sky in front of me, basketball, like in the sky, with like a trail. And it fills out about, if I'm looking at my windshield name, if I put my fingers up, the size of I put my thumb to the tip of my pinky finger. Anyway, I'm like, this is unbelievable. I'm thinking it has to be a thing that you could explain, blah, blah, blah. But holy, what a thing that I just happened to be looking out and seeing it, whatever. Well, a year later, okay, or more, a year and a half, finally, because I've been looking, does anybody else see this? Like, and a guy with a dash cam caught it, and it was a comet flying, and he caught the same 2.5 seconds that I fortunately got to see. And then through the YouTube or whatever, someone actually saw it at the same time, because there's some billion people on this earth. Some other dude saw it, and now got to explain what I saw, which I knew it was, but that's pretty cool, eh?
Yeah, I have. There are, if you think about it for a second, when we, shooting star, comet, meteor, satellite debris re-entering the atmosphere, so much of that is never seen. Right? Never seen. I had a sighting, and this is no joke, man. No joke. Middle of the day, 2:00 in the afternoon, I see something in the sky, cloudless sky, and I see something smoking, and it's coming towards me. It's going from the south, it's going to the north. And I look, and it flies right over my head. And as it flies over my head, I look, and it's a meteor flaming, and I can hear it crackling, burning. and it's flaming, and I could see the rock. I could see the fires off the back of it, long trail of smoke, and it's not
I
even.
think that's what I saw, bro.
This was big. But anyway.
Okay.
This is here in Southern California, and I watch it fly overhead all the way and then go behind the mountains, and I'm thinking to myself, and it wasn't that fast either. It wasn't that. Anyway, I'm imagining myself jumping in my car, getting that direction and going, and getting me some meteorite stone and sell it on eBay. But nothing in the news. Nobody talked about it. No photographs, no video, and I saw it.
How long was it in the air?
This is
literally again 1,000.
No, this is
1,000 and gone.
No, this lasted for 15 seconds longer.
Oh snap! Okay.
Yeah, and so, but anyway, this was 2010, 2011. And I saw it go down. Nothing in the news. I wanted to know if it hit a house, if it landed in a farm. I want to know how big it was. I wanted to know if there was a crater left. I wanted to know who found it. Nothing, not a peep. And I saw it. I watched it. I just watched it.
So what do you mean? What do you think? You think it hit the earth? You saw it
crashed.
Like that thing.
This thing when it went over my head, I'm gonna say I don't know, a few thousand feet, 5,000 feet.
Yeah, flying.
It wasn't high at all. I heard it. I could hear it.
That's what I'm saying. Wow.
Yeah. Hey, what was your name again?
Yeah, Ed, brother.
Thank you, Ed. Great phone call, my friend.
Thank you, man. Okay, I'm going to listen forever. Thanks, brother.
Okay, man. Be safe up there. That's what I'm talking about. When I say up there, I'm talking about the Great White North. That is Canada. Rick Emmett, Triumph. Talked about Triumph this weekend. I saw this thing, and it was obviously what it was, just a meteor. But to see it flying so slowly, right? It was crazy, and I could hear it, I could see it, I saw the details, and it was amazing. You know what it burned like? And I went and talked to a couple of friends of mine were standing there watching this. It reminded me of you remember those little snake pellets that you could light on fire, right? And then it would, right? It was like that. It was burning like that on the back of it. It was like flaming, like with intention. Gray smoke, like those snake pellets. What do they call those? Those little snake things that I forget what they were called. I don't know. Do they even still have those? Can you still buy them? But it was like that. So it was burning from the back end, creating that crazy smoke that was staying in the air, and it just flew past. It wasn't like the blink of an eye. It wasn't breaking the speed of sound. It was pretty slow, like it should have fallen out of the sky. And it went right behind the mountains here in Burbank. I don't know whatever happened to it. Crazy, right? Ah, man, what a great conversation tonight with Chance Gardner and everybody. MagicalEgypt.com. There is a promo that is out there on Facebook, and it's really, really funny. And it's a sound clip of what I had to say when I was introducing Chance about Magical Egypt. And the impact that it had. All of Magical Egypt is available at MagicalEgypt.com, so you can go back and watch the original ones. It's out there. It's all over the web, but that's not the point. Support Magical Egypt. Go and get it. Use the promo code F2 Fade2 Black and go and subscribe. They have a brilliant a website and channel. You get your own dashboard and so forth. But you can go back and watch the original Magical Egypt. The intro, and I always go back to episode 1. The intro there, when John Anthony West turns around and looks in the camera and he's standing in between these pillars, right? And he turns and he looks at the camera. Something happens at that moment, and you realize that John Anthony West possesses the knowledge, and he's about to share it with you. They take a tour, and I've mentioned this before. They take a tour of the Cairo Museum, and they're looking at these different display cases, and the way that Chance shoots all of these artifacts, and you're listening to John, and you're going on this tour. It's stuff that you've never seen presented before. It's the secret stuff, right? But then you get John's narration and his description of the symbolism. Symbolist Egypt. It is done so well. It's just incredible. So with that, I'm going to get out of here. Tomorrow night, Ken Johnston is with us, and he's got a collection of NASA images that he was ordered to destroy. He did not. He made copies. I think he destroyed one set. He kept the other set for himself. The images are incredible. So we're going to discuss tomorrow night some of these images, what is in them, and what the implications are. Okay, so that's going to be tomorrow night. Wednesday night is Michaela Sheldon, and she's back, and we're going to be discussing the message to humanity. Thursday night, another Fader night with John Rappaport and his No More Fake Newsroom, followed by Open Lines. This is Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Fade to Black's executive producer is Rita Kamurian. Show is produced by Hilton J. Palm, Renee, Dennis, and Bob. Announcers are Steve Harder, Gene Vitoa, Mark D. Kovar. Webmaster, Drew the Geek. Music, Doug Aldrich. Intro, Spaceboy, spaceboymusic.com. Fade to Black is produced by KJCR for the Game Changer Network, and syndication is KGRA, The Planet. This broadcast is owned and copyrighted 2018 by Fade to Black and the Game Changer Network. It cannot be rebroadcast, downloaded, copied, or used anywhere in the known universe without written permission from Fade to Black or the Game Changer Network. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Follow me on Twitter at JChurchRadio. Everybody go to OnStellar, alpha.onstellar.com. Register, get your profile page going. It's the next great social media network. Until tomorrow night with Ken Johnston, I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Be safe. Go Beckley Tepe.